live right now, you can follow the channel on @ValueAnalyst1 on YouTube, and there's a live chat function over there. People like to chat while this space is going on. Sometimes about other topics, which is kind of interesting to me always. All right, let's bring in Freddie. Freddie, how are you?
Doing good. Got my Cybertruck in today.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
When is
So
the
I'm super
expected
excited.
delivery?
I'm in Dallas, so should be within a week.
Okay, that's awesome. Are you gonna drive down to Austin and give me a ride?
Sure.
Yeah. Where are you picking it up, in Dallas or Austin?
In Dallas. If they would let me pick it up in Austin at the factory, I'd do that 100%.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they let you do that, right?
There's no way to request it. I think they
Oh, really?
just automatically send it out. So
I feel like it would be so much easier for everybody and great experience for you too, you know?
would be get a little factory tour in and then
Maybe.
pick up your car and then go.
Well, when you throw in the factory tour in there, now you're creating work for Tesla. But if you just say, you know what, I'm just gonna walk in and grab the one, if they had like deleted up between dual motor and I mean there aren't that many trims right now. So dual motor, tri motor, group them up and then have people just walk in and grab and go,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I see Omar in the space, Meta, Alex, Wes, you all are welcome to come up. We have YouTube Live going on at the same time. Ads revenue from YouTube Live helps keep this space open and free for all. So I do encourage people to subscribe to YouTube channel as well and engage with others in live chat. Omar, how are you? Omar? Meta?
I'm good. I'm going to be in and out mentally a fair bit. So
Okay.
I'm happy to like switch down to listener at times, but I'm writing a bunch of things and my brain's probably going to be distracted at times.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You're welcome to come up anytime you want. I was thinking about yesterday's Dan O'Dodd space, and I have some thoughts on it, kind of thinking about what we could have done better for even better results. And I think there's some value to, leaving a conversation, whether it's in one of these spaces or in personal life, on a good note, because that's usually tends to be someone's it kind of outweighs everything else that came before it in terms of remembering the space, I think. And you want people to coming back to the conversation, I think. So always coming back to the conversation later on, leaving the door open. And I think it's really important to kind of leave the conversation on a good note. So I tried to do that yesterday towards the end, but then we couldn't do that. So I'll try harder next time. Omar, how are you? Can you hear me, Omar? All right.
Hey, yeah, I'm doing good.
Okay.
I'm washing my Cybertruck, so I'm at the car wash outside.
Oh, okay. And is it any different than washing any other Tesla?
No, they seem to know how to do it. Same water works, so.
Are you using Starlink connection?
No, I'm just using the cell tower. So, my thoughts on Dan O'Dowd are.
Yeah, your connection is a little poor, Omar. So let's go to Ahmed. Ahmed, go ahead.
Hey guys, how are you? I think the conversation yesterday, parts of it went well, parts of it didn't. But again, you kind of live, you learn. When you're so adamant about one side, you kind of fight your hardest to get your points across. So I think that's what happened. Did you get kicked out? No, I'm sorry. I think that's what happened. There's a lot of passionate people on. I also think that it's very good to hear the other side of an argument and be as receptive as possible to that argument.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Alex.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, personally, I think my feeling is it goes a little along what Alexandra said, that giving him a platform is basically like a waste of time. But if
Well, I
people
mean, in that case, people with platforms shouldn't. Like, if you think that, don't give him a platform.
No,
But
that's fine.
also,
And
like,
yeah, no, I
it's,
respect your position of
Okay.
wanting to do. So I'm just saying my personal opinion. I think we've beaten that horse to death, and it's not gonna, nothing's gonna come out of it.
I don't think so. I disagree vehemently.
Really?
Because I actually learned a lot from yesterday's space. I don't know if people were listening to the same space. Honestly, I don't understand
From
what's going
Dan?
on here. Because yeah, absolutely, about his
Really?
position. Absolutely. I mean, do you want to repeat again?
No. I'm just saying. Okay, so anyway, that was just my personal opinion as to how to make it better. The space. I think you would do well to have maybe, let's say, somebody hosting, maybe a co-host, maybe not two co-hosts. Have Dan, and then bring people one at a time. It felt like he was being pushed around from one people to another, changing. So maybe go one at a time, where somebody makes a comment and he comments back, and that gets settled. You bring the person down, you bring another one up. It might be easier than to have him being bounced around among people. That's one thing I noticed.
Okay, thank you. Meta.
Yeah, I think the thing I would agree with as well, and when I think about the discussions we have with GG, or I forget the guy's, Gordon Johnson, in this space, and you had other bears in the space, and we've had very productive conversations with people with opposing views, and I think that's how you refine your understanding, despite the ups and downs in that conversation. I think it could have been, like, I think you did a good job moderating, and I understand it's a challenge because you weren't, like, you're in a precarious place moderating that particular conversation. My thoughts are, if Dan had brought more of his folks, the engineers.
Why do you say that?
Why do I say that? Because I feel like in past moderations, you've been more neutral when there was a lot of bulls and bears. And in this last one, you did ask questions directly, right? So it pulled you out of the neutral position, which we all know, obviously, it's difficult.
I'm not trying to be 100% neutral all the time.
I agree.
I mean, that's like, I'm not Switzerland. I'm trying to learn. And that was the more difficult part for me yesterday, is that there were so many people yelling at this guy, piling on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I know you kind of dropped off, but my feedback for the group was, I think it's important that you leave a conversation on a good note. And it's good to understand that you step back and think about why you're in this conversation. Are you trying to win an argument? Are you trying to convince the other side, or are you trying to understand the other side? Do you want to build a relationship that opens this door where you can maybe understand each other a little better? And I tried to close the space on a good note on 2-3 occasions yesterday. But at the same time, people are, oh, wait, one more thing. One more question. Dan, you're like this and this and this and this. No, like, that doesn't do it. That's not a good way to leave a conversation. That guy isn't going to come back if you do it that way. So, or a girl, or a woman, wife, spouse, whatever. So I think it's very important that we kind of really try to focus on this ideal of perfect communication. How do we get to perfect communication, whether it's Dan or Gordon Johnson or even Machine, where somebody who just doesn't care about data and he just wants to put words in your mouth all the time and just eat lots of chicken.
The fact is that most people are too emotional and they can't have a rational conversation. I mean, look at the speaker board. You have Alex, Brazilians. Brazilians are totally irrational, hot-headed people. You can't trust them. they'll stab you in the back. Man, they're hard. The women. Never mind. Strike that. And the fact is I didn't even go on this space yesterday. Of course, I was busy, but also I knew, just looking at some of the speakers, that people are going to get too emotional in their attacks. They just want to attack Denodow. They want to show him who's boss, and because they feel personally hurt.
Exactly.
And I'm so sick and tired of this.
I know.
Just try to learn something. If you don't want to learn something or show your points, then just be quiet, because it's wasting my energy. It's wasting everyone's energy just attacking each other to just see who wins. No, I want to get to the truth. And sure, you want to show your points to other people, and hopefully they'll pick up on them. But you know what? Sometimes they won't, because they're closed-minded too. And you could do the best you can, but you have to still go back to yourself and say, am I taking all this information in a rational way to make the best decisions for myself? And how are you going to act if you're actually trying to do that? And I think most people aren't. So, yeah.
Well said. Freddie.
So if I'd suggest an alternate sort of structure for doing something like this again, it might be as a fireside chat, or like sort of a one-on-one conversation with sort of curation of all the different questions and points that you want to make from the bull community, just to make it less like you're ganging up on him, right? Because I feel like that puts somebody in the defensive and in a psychological mindset that's very much fight or flight. Versus if it's a one-on-one chat, you can sort of dive deeper, do it in an orderly and sort of cordial
Well,
conversation.
here's the unrealistic part about that. Okay, so fewer speakers aren't the solution necessarily. Okay, although yesterday it might have helped. What you really want is a good group, a team effort, a good group of speakers, like good speakers with the mentality that Machine just explained. Because I need Meta and Wes and Omar on the board. Like, I need them. I can't just be like one by one every time somebody has something to say, because they all have different expertises, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess if the goal is to try to figure out what his position is, a one-on-one chat is probably a better way to do that. If you're engaging in a debate, of course, then that's absolutely the right way to go.
Meta, Alex, Ahmed.
I think another way to do it, rather than reducing the number of speakers, is to go topic by topic. And I think you've done that pretty well in other spaces as well. From a moderation standpoint, I totally understand how challenging it can be. If participating is hard, I can't imagine how hard moderating is. So it's not criticism on that. It's just more of a feedback on where we could go in the future.
Yeah, I was
Alex,
just gonna touch on two things real quick. Like the first one is like you say you need Meta, you need Wes, you need Omar. This is because you want like the rebuttal on
not true.
No?
Not true. No.
Well, you want
Because
expertise, which is going to be contrary to what he's saying.
No, that's not necessarily true. I want good people who are experts in their areas, right? Wes is an expert in the area, Meta is not. Meta is an expert in the area, Wes is not. So when Daniel Dot says a sentence, maybe there's a word in there that kind of prompts a question for Wes or Meta that I might not think of. That's why I need experts on the panel in a situation like that. Like, fewer speakers are not necessarily the solution here.
Yeah, no. But I'm saying, like, there was not that many questions. Like, Dan is not an expert. He admitted it himself. So basically, there's no like one word that he misspoke on something. He has an opinion, based on his own personal experience, and I think a lot of bias. And this leads me to my second part: is like Gordon Johnson, Lynette Lopez, who like for years and years and years have been wrong and of bad faith in everything they say about Tesla. It doesn't matter what it is about Tesla, Elon, all these things, they're always on the negative side with no apparent evidence ever bring forth to back their opinion. what's the point of debating? You know, people have debated facts with
Yeah.
Gordon like
I'll
over and
answer
over.
that.
It
Yeah, I'll
doesn't,
answer that.
you know,
So,
it's like,
First of all, I think we need to recognize they're not 100% wrong. Like they're not 100% all the time wrong. Okay. If
That's
you
good.
agree with me that they're not 100% wrong, then I think it's worth searching for that 0.1% that they might be right. That
yeah,
we
I'm
might
just
have
saying
missed.
there's the bad faith that gets mixed in. So somebody can
That's
be like
okay.
of good faith, 99% wrong, 1% right, and I'm totally open to having a discussion with these somebody like that. But somebody that's been systematically of bad faith, 99% wrong, and I'm looking for the 1% they might be right on, I feel like,
Yeah.
what's the point of that? They're of bad faith. They're not going to
Yeah, well, I
change.
said the point is the 1%. That's the point. And as long as everybody's on the same page about their bias, then it's fine. Okay, let's go to Meta Ahmed Machine. Sorry, Meta Machine Ahmed.
Yeah, I just want to underscore what I think Yaman is saying here, and I agree with this. No, it is my personal belief, no baby is born evil. It's not okay to just dump people into that bucket. So that
I was
means
thinking the exact same thing about an hour ago. Yeah.
you're thinking about babies being born evil.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not being
Yeah,
born evil, but
I know, I know.
I'm just thinking like we're not born like this.
Right. So there's either environmental circumstances that led somebody to the position they have, financial circumstances, some other system. So trying to understand those has value, not necessarily that you can convince that individual. That is not the goal, right? I think we had a space before that. It is to convince people that maybe are listening to them or falling victim to the same influences, and understanding that helps us.
Machine.
Yeah, maybe I agree. Albeit no babies are born evil, but maybe Christine Noem's dog was born evil. I'm not sure.
Your references are needing some work, Machine. You need to get some anti-rust solution, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I was in Florida, so I rusted a lot. It's humid. But I was going to actually just say what you said, which is basically it's not about convincing Dan O'Dowd. It's about having a space, a place for all participants, not just biased people who are coming to learn something, who maybe are biased one way or another, to hear arguments from both sides in a legitimate, rational fashion, and then they can change their minds. You're not going to change Dan O'Dowd's mind. And if it's just people on both sides who are like totally hypnotized or already persuaded, and there's nothing you can do, I guess that wouldn't add value. But there's some people here who are willing to change their minds, and those are the people who are going to benefit.
Ahmed.
Yeah, I also think that the arguments that Dan was coming up with ultimately led to his side or his stance, like understanding where his stance is from financially and how he's tied to that stance. But it was overshadowed by the perception of him being ganged up on, right? But once we knew where his financial motives come from and why he's having that stance, I think it kind of
No one doubted that this guy has some sort of motive or bias. Okay.
right.
So this entire first 5-10 minutes of accusing of having worked with Tesla, employee, contractor, getting laid off, etc., added nothing to the conversation except to antagonize the guy.
Right, but what it added to the listeners is like I understood his position of why he's so adamantly.
Did you doubt that he had bias on it going into the space?
I didn't doubt it. I didn't doubt it, but it just confirmed it, and then it made me look.
So
at
it confirmed that you already thought. Okay, so isn't that confirmation bias?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, thank you. Alex and Ameda.
Yeah, like on that same note, we're all like Tesla shareholder, Tesla owner, so we also have our bias here. You know, it's harder to see for us, but
No,
the only
everybody
thing,
has bias. Nobody's claiming
exactly,
they don't have bias.
exactly. What I was going to say is that what I found interesting, like you said, it brought nothing to reveal his bias to the crowd. I think maybe a lot of people did not know, but what I found interesting was his responses when, like, do you work for Tesla? He was, I'm not sure. Did you ever work? Like, Alexandra had to pull the information out of him. He was not like forthcoming with it. Oh, I don't know why we, and then it's all, he put in an impossible deadline. And so initially he had no information, then he suddenly had information because he was sensing that Alexandra had the information. And I thought that was a little shifty of him, and it set the tone
I don't think
also
so.
for the
I
rest.
disagree. I disagree
Really?
with your take.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think the guy just didn't remember. It's 10 years ago. He's like 80 something.
Okay.
Meta.
I just want to say, like, from a first principle standpoint, I can be wrong about things in AI. So even if I have background in AI, you shouldn't just assume that anything I say is correct. That's a terrible way to reason. You should always go from first principles bottom up, not from like, heuristic thinking and what I would say is lazy thinking and just saying, I'm going to understand who the person is and then I'm just going to believe everything they say from there on out. You should try to understand what they're saying from as close to the first principles as you can and work your way up from there. And then the last thing I'll say on that is, I don't think breaking somebody down builds towards consensus and understanding. If the person has a bias, we should also acknowledge that we are shareholders. Many of us have a lot of shares in this company. We have financial motives too. And maybe it's not as billions of dollars, but it's still percentage. It's a percentage of our biases. We spend time in this. We've got our reputations, our life energy spent on this. Breaking down all those biases doesn't really do much. I think the only thing that it helps is if we can kind of get to a point of where are you coming from for your fear of safety. Okay, that's a different bias conversation than your personal motivation, maybe.
For the record, I don't trust anything that comes out of your mouth.
All right. Okay, let's switch to talking about FST. We have a lot to talk about today. While we have Machine, Omar, and Meta on the board, I do want to kind of dig into Meta has limited time today. He has to do some work. Meta, can you explain to us maybe some of these scaling laws that Machine has also been learning about, and the Chinchilla papers about training compute versus inference, training time versus inference time, or accuracy, sorry, error rate. The other ones that Ashok talked about, are these based on papers that you may have read, or is this something that Tesla is seeing in the data that they have?
These are all follow-ons of the Chinchilla paper, in my opinion. The way to think of this, and I'm going to try and maybe I should draw this out, but if you just picture like a cube, right? It's got height, width, and depth. What the Chinchilla paper was showing was if height is the input, like the length of the tokens, so number of pixels coming in from the cameras, map data, time, location, country, all this kind of stuff, that's the height. The width is the number of layers, which can be used to approximate the number of parameters, if you will. So height times width gives you a surface area. That's the number of parameters. Then the last piece is training time, which is the depth. And the volume of this cube is your overall cost, right? So when you go to train something, it's the volume that you got to think about. When you go to run it on inference, it's just that surface, that cross section of height versus width you got to think about. And it's the height that dictates, the kinds of things you can do, and it's the width that dictates how deeply you can think about it. Those three dimensions and the relationship of them and how they scale amongst each other came from the Chinchilla paper. The exact constant multipliers are domain specific, but it seems to be holding across many domains.
What do you think of Adrian's comments about chill mode versus aggressive mode, assertive mode?
I don't know how concretely he was talking about it, but there is definitely a difference, at least in my experience, when you're in assertive mode, it tries to do more lane changes. It could be a placebo, but I feel like it tries to do more lane changes. The more lane changes you do, the more likely you are to have a takeover. So I think that holds some water.
Is that the only difference?
I mean, that's the only difference I remember ever seeing in release notes. I'm sure there are other differences.
Does it have anything to do with planning ahead further or shorter?
No, I don't think so. That would be architecturally quite different.
Does it have anything to do with not taking risks? So lane change would be one of them, taking fewer risks.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, from the initial release notes when it came out, it said something like how long it waits before trying to make a lane change. But when it tried to make the lane change, it was equally safe.
Gotcha, Alex.
Yeah, I tried them both. I didn't try the middle setting. But I switched around between assertive and chill. And honestly, I didn't feel there was much of a difference, but it's more of a feeling that it felt more natural on assertive and less annoying than when on chill. That's basically it. But it's not like some people have said that they've had an experience that it's massively different. I just thought the experience was more human-like on assertive than on chill. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I was just kind of wondering in the context of error rates, and I wonder how different the error rates are between the two. So I asked Cyberlift and Miss Julianne to potentially to maybe test those. I don't know what kind of test they will come up with, and I don't know what the best way to test it is, but we'll see what they come up with. Dylan and then ACDC.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I thought the chill, average, and assertive was just like its patience before it goes around a car or make the lane change. So like assertive would have less patience than chill.
Got it. ACDC.
So the only difference that I can think there is, and it says this right underneath the toggle on the interface, that it's just a difference of follow distance, and that said that it varies the follow distance between the modes. And trying them, they don't see too much different personally to me. So,
Josh.
Hey guys, I'm driving on 12.3.5, and yeah, I was just going to say similarly with chill, average, and assertive. Basically, chill is less lane changes, so it's less maneuvers. So therefore, your risk in a maneuver is going to be greatly reduced in chill. So that kind of lines up with what was being said in the space yesterday. Less chances being taken is less risk.
Okay, great. If anybody else has any other views they would like to share about their experience with FSD, chill mode, assertive mode. Yesterday in a space, we learned that chill mode has lower error rates than assertive mode. And I'm just kind of trying to dig into it a little bit more and understand a little bit more, like how much lower, what are the types of errors that assertive mode may make that chill mode may not. So any experience that you may have, please request to speak. Joseph? Joseph?
For the chill mode versus aggressive, I'm not sure it's directly about lane changes. I think it's more about its speed tolerance. So with aggressive, it wants to keep going 75. And if someone's going 74, it's going to lane change. In chill mode, it's more like 5 to 8 miles per hour under that speed that it's trying to go before.
Interesting. Thank you. Machine.
I don't have anything to say on this topic.
Meta.
Yeah, I'm happy to switch back to the scaling stuff since Machine's on the board.
Okay.
I think,
yeah,
by the
let's
way,
switch
as a
that
heads
there
up,
for a second.
there's some glitchiness happening in the space. So if I'm dropping back up and down, sometimes
Yeah, I noticed. Omar dropped off 5 times or so too. All right, scaling laws.
Machine, do you want to try and do like a mathematical deep dive into it to try and see what we can glean out of it?
Sure. I don't know what I haven't learned anything new since the last time we talked to contribute anything new from our last discussion, but we can
That's
try.
okay. What I was thinking of doing was, you laid a good groundwork for why we might need 100x more parameters effectively. And what we could do is discuss how that can be achieved synthetically without actually increasing the hardware.
How would
Exactly.
you increase? I get a synthetic data. How would you increase data? Orders
Data
of
would be
magnitude.
one.
What's that?
Yeah, data would be one way.
What else?
So you have the 3 dimensions, right? So you could either increase the data, you could decrease the input, or you could increase the training time.
Yep.
So on hardware 4, they're doing an emulation, or whether hardware or software, of the cameras, right? So they're only sampling the pixels. Do you think it's possible? Like, I think we saw a patent on this too, right? Where Tesla was saying they could sample from pixels at different rates. Do you think they could theoretically do that?
Yes, but I'm not sure how that addresses the compute. You're talking from the compute aspect.
Yeah, so like I was thinking about this. Like if you look at the camera, most of the time when you're driving, there is like around the horizon where the things are. And if you look at the car camera, right, it captures things like the sky and very like parts of itself and various other things. And many of those things could probably be downsampled, right? Maybe it's helpful to see what the sky looks like, but you don't need to sample it at such a high rate. Maybe if you realize it's raining, you upsample the the sample rate. Maybe they should just put rain sensors and they don't have to do that at all. But there's various other ways you could basically play with the input size. That'd be one. And then the second thing is, oh well, let's talk about that one first, and then we can talk about the other one after.
Well, I presume you mean basically not the fact that the hardware 4 maybe has more inference tops, but the fact that it can handle a higher camera resolution means that you have a trade-off between resolution and sampling rate. Like those are 2 different ways to increase the overall signal to noise ratio of what you're getting out from the images. And I believe it's like if you increase the number of images, I believe it's to the square root of the number of images. SNR, your signal noise ratio, is proportional to the square root of the number of images. So if you 4x the number of images or 4x the frames per second, you will 2x the signal noise ratio. Whereas I don't remember what it is for 4xing the camera resolution, which is what they're doing going from hardware 3 to hardware 4. What that does exactly to SNR, it might be similar. So you have that trade-off, and what you're talking about is more nuanced, which is basically this sort of adaptive sampling, adaptive either in time, or more complicated is adaptive spatially, right? Where you're focused on certain regions of the image and sample it more often versus not. And I don't know, the limited firmware work that I've done, that seems to be more difficult to get working all the way in real-time operating system. But I could see the adaptive time sampling part for sure.
Yeah. So just to go a little bit further, right? So if we put this into bits, the input, right, the height of the model is dictated by the number of inputs. And so you could think of it like for every pixel, like the brute force way would be to say, we're going to take 300 pictures over 60 frames per second. That gives us 5 seconds of footage. We're going to multiply every one of the 8 cameras resolutions, and we're gonna number all these pixels. So it'll be like, this is the 00 pixel from camera 0 at time 0. This is the 00 pixel from camera 0 at time 1, and so on and so forth. And you have 30 of those. You multiply all that out, you do the cross product of across all those dimensions, and that's your input size to the model. plus other things like map data, etc. So if you can take some chunk of that and say, well, for the sky, we're only going to sample it every 5th frame, you could reduce the total input that's going into the model, right? And of course, it's not just 1 pixel; it's like a lot of pixels. So if you can get a meaningful compression on the input layer, that would help. Oh, we lost machine.
Yeah. While he's gone, he's probably having some issues. Can you answer the following question? So we can 10x the double time to have the error rate at inference time, 10x the training time, right? To have the error rate at inference.
Yeah.
If we 10x data, 1 second. If we 10x data, do we get the same half or less or more?
Yeah, so the chinchilla paper showed it was about half for language. The paper that machine showed that it's roughly a 30% improvement, not a 50% improvement. So it's linear. It's somewhere in there, but it's not necessarily exactly half.
So the machine, the paper machine referenced 30% for LLMs or for video?
That was for video.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's less for video. Okay.
Correct.
And then the question was, if we 10x the data input at training time, do we get the same half? Is it linear or is it less or more?
Yeah, so what the chinchilla paper does show is the proportions. So once you figure out what the proportions are, then whether you 10x the training time or you 10x the data, the paper's saying you get the same trade-off. So you can trade off data for training time.
Gotcha. And just remind me again, what was your position on synthetic data? So simulated data, if we put that in there with variations. So just ignore edge cases for a second. Just assume that we have all the edge cases. Then what?
I think synthetic data helps.
Okay, so it's not supported by any sort of paper. This is your feeling.
No. There are papers on this. I can find you some papers if you want. There's plenty of papers in the LLM space. I don't know if I've seen any in the in the video processing space. Video hasn't been as, like, people do images, people do text. I think it's just expensive to do research on video.
Oh, I see. Okay, interesting. Yeah, machine came back and then dropped off again. It's so fickle. His connection is really bad, I guess.
No, I think it might be the space, because if it's me, machine, and Omar, it could be your connection or something.
It's not my connection. I have perfect connection right now. Definitely not my connection. But it may be some sort of bug.
It could be X. They laid off more people maybe on the spaces team.
Although I'm not seeing any issues in the replies, so I wonder if it's a speaker board issue. Usually, when we have an issue that affects the entire space, I get dozens of replies.
It's not a technical reason. Machine just sent me a message. He'll be back in a few minutes. He needs to go deal with something.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Maybe let's touch base back in like an hour on this, because that would be a fun conversation, but I do want to have it with machine on the board.
Okay. And does the synthetic data help as much as real data? Just assume for a second that we have all the edge cases.
Yeah, so far I think there are papers trying to study how much synthetic data is too much synthetic data, but I don't think anybody's been able to come up with like a golden ratio or anything. Or I may have missed a paper.
Interesting. So this is why Waymo is able to get so good without having millions of cars.
This is also why they used to
a lot more.
Yeah, this is why they bragged about having billions of miles in simulation, and Elon used to make fun of them. And now you look back and it's like, oh crap, they might have been right.
Yeah, and why not trillions? Why only billions of miles in simulated mile, right? If it's simulated, what's the...
Well, this is the catch-22. The hardware you need to build the simulations is the same hardware you need to do the training. So hardware in the cloud being your limiting factor, now it's like, where do you put it? Do you put it to generate the data, or do you just go collect the data?
Very interesting. And is this the H100s we're talking again?
Yes.
And very interesting. All right, while Dale talks, I'll think of more questions. Dale?
Well, I was just wanted Meta to, can you give a brief definition of scaling laws and what you mean?
Sure. I don't know if I'm going to, I'll maybe have to refine it or change it over time, but the scaling laws generally refer to, can you create an equation where if we, maybe it'll be helpful if we just read the Wikipedia definition of big O rather than me trying to say it, but effectively, if we ignore constant factors and we just try to look at proportionality, what is the rough proportion of like linear to order of magnitude increase, or exponential, or whatever that ratio looks like, so that we can understand as one number gets larger, how much larger is the other number getting roughly?
Yeah. And I mean, the way I think about it is, with developing FSD, you're trying to get to 0 mistakes, 0 errors, right? And what happens to your error rate at inference time when you're driving the car if you increase your training compute and hold everything else constant, or if you increase the data that you feed in during training time and hold everything else constant, or other factors? So it's just a general term about studying sensitivity analysis, basically.
It also tells you where not to spend your resources, right? So once you've increased your data to a certain point, unless you're going to increase it another 10x, it may not be the right place to spend more time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so meta question for you. I know you have to go. Let's say you're in charge today, and you have all. Okay, let's say you have all the eight. No. Are you buying more H100s? Are you 10x H100s or data miles that you're collecting from the fleet, or something else? Meta? No, connection issues. Yeah, if you guys are having connection issues, just let me know in the replies. I don't see anyone else having. I think it might be a speaker board type of issue.
Not a good question for Meta, but
Let's see if he can come back up.
Might be glitched.
Or Wes. What's your question? Yeah,
Hey, man, I missed you there for the last minute. You said I had a question for you, and then I lost you.
Yeah, if you're in charge, would you 10x training time or data fed into training process or something else today?
Oh, you took away inference as an option.
Yeah, inference. I mean, we have an increase in with hardware 4, we have that, but he wants hardware 3 cars to work, obviously.
Of course,
right?
Of course, yeah. If you could magically,
but he could have easily switched, training for hardware 4 right now, right? He could have done that months ago, and he's clearly just adamant about making these hardware 3 cars work.
Correct. Also, not entirely. We'd have to see, right? If you start using the additional camera sensors from the pixels on hardware 4, theoretically, you might actually need a bigger model, but I doubt it's proportional, right? Highly doubt that. So realistically, there is a lot more capacity on hardware 4. They could theoretically say, we can't get hardware 3 working, let's just try to get hardware 4 working. But I agree that from all intents and purposes, it does seem like Elon's convinced, or someone is convinced, that it will work on hardware 3. So that's a distraction. So if we remove the bring in all the hardware 3 cars and upgrade them to hardware 4 option right from the table, which, Machine made a good point. Like, if you just increase inference in the cars, that's the fastest way to get there. If we're going down to now data versus training, that's a nuanced conversation because I don't know which one is the bottleneck. It'll keep switching between the two.
Got it. And is there a close third factor?
If all else being equal, if I could only pick one without more data, I would always go with training because training compute could be repurposed for synthetic data creation.
Perfect. That's a perfect answer. That's very good. Okay, one more thing. Let's say you can collect 10% more disengagement data and you have a choice. You can either collect it from the US fleet or Chinese fleet. Which one are you picking?
If I can get 10% more and it's going to be quality, I assume, I would go with the US because the March of Nines in one country being accomplished means you can launch it there.
Okay, good. Dale, then Mike.
So this is a bit long-winded, but Jan LeCun, I was just listening to an interview with Lex Friedman, and he talked about LLMs and their limitations and how they're kind of begin to cap out with logic and reasoning. And he cited the reason for it. Text is a rough approximation or representation of the world, but it's actually quite rough. So you put 15 trillion or so tokens. Did he pop off, Yaman?
Yeah, he has a lot of work today, so he has to. He was on. He gave me heads up. He was only going to be available for about half hour, and he did that. So, but anything, I mean, we have others in the audience, Dale, and you can share. I can keep the question in mind and ask him another time. So that's always an option. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, some of these models are using up to 15 trillion tokens, which is a lot of text. But yet the LLMs seem to be peaking out with reasoning and logic. Now, what does this have to do with Tesla? Let me just expand on the point a little bit more. A human child, because they have sight, smell, um, they can use text, elementary text. They have all these different modalities. Their reasoning ability seems to be far greater than an LLM, not informationally, but from a reason-only perspective. And I'll give you an example. If you ask an LLM, Mike has 10 cars and he lets Julie drive 3 of them. How many cars does Mike have? The answer is 10 still. But generally the LLMs will say 7. So that's a simple mistake in reasoning. So here's why this kind of moves to Tesla. Tesla is using vision only, is my understanding. So that's one modality. So my question to Meta would have been, because of that single modality, are we going to see limitations in where it can get to? And albeit it might be 10 times human performance, but because of that single modality, will we reach a limit at some point? Does that make sense, Yaman, or am I messing that up?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I got your question. I think you can. I mean, we're so far away from that, but yeah, I agree with you. Like, for example, if you were able to, with the microphone on the cars already, if you could kind of listen to any sort of sounds like humans listen to, like a ambulance approaching from a distance, and you can hear it, or a fire truck, you can hear it, even though you may not see it, right? I mean, that's obviously valuable information. On the other hand, we have 8 cameras around the car that see even pretty far back that humans don't. So, does the car have can the car already see that ambulance approaching from the back with that camera? Does it have to hear it? So that's an open question. But like I said, this is several nines down the line, right?
I think it could be, and I think my reason for thinking we've got lots of room yet is just because of the optimism. And Elon said they can see a few versions into the future. So I think they're gonna for sure hit how many times human level performance, but how far does that go before it tops out with a single modality?
Makes sense. Thank you. And I'll ask that question to Meta too when he comes back. Joey?
Hey, Yaman, thanks for having me. So I just wanted to ask, I'm kind of a pivot from FSD and more to Tesla charging. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the recent layoffs of apparently the whole team. Just want to see like what you think the future of Tesla charging is.
Yeah, if Wes wants to come up or others who want to share their views on this question, obviously an interesting move by Tesla. We weren't expecting it, but at the same time, my overall view about these things is that I'm not in a position to second guess Elon. We have 1/1000th of the data experience running a company like Tesla that he has. So this armchair core backing is not productive. That's number one. Now, now having said that, it is interesting, right? And it's not the entire team. My understanding is that there are still some people there, although it's most of the team. Let's wait to hear what he has to say on it. But maybe he doesn't see charging as a limiting factor at this point. Maybe he sees some turbulent times ahead for the business or the macroeconomy. The fact is, the business made $1 billion in free cash flow in the last 12 months. Okay, 1 billion free cash flow in the last 12 months. Interest rates are still high to the extent that some buyers may be concerned about geopolitical risk. They're seeing some headlines, what have you. That may be an issue. Those are still here. This morning, we had consumer confidence announced. Lowest in 2 years. Okay. Lowest in 2 years. So this guy's looking at a business that generated $1 billion of cash in the last 12 months. He's looking at all this data and all the data that he sees through his business and suppliers and SpaceX, Starlink, etc., and X as well at this time. And maybe he's seeing more than we are. I mean, he's definitely seeing more than we are. So I don't second guess him. And he can always roll these things back too. Like, it's not like, the supercharging is done forever. Or maybe he has another plan. And he doesn't have to share it with us either. So he's the CEO.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I mean, Elon is, he really is a visionary. But honestly, for me, one of the biggest things I see is, will this affect, I guess, people wanting to work at Tesla if they aren't, guaranteed job security?
Yeah, they can go work at Rivian. Yeah, they can go work at Rivian. They can go work at Ford, GM. Lucid is doing great these days, right? They sold a lot of cars in the last few months. Their stock price is mooning. Maybe go work for those companies with stock-based compensation. Dallas.
Hey, Young. Is there anything in the current hardware suite that would inform drivers around you that your vehicle is being operated autonomously? So just to keep them aware of that.
Sorry, can you ask that? I got distracted with all the emojis in the audience. Say it again.
No, I was just curious. I know someone mentioned the other day potentially putting some sort of light in a future vehicle that tells vehicles around you that the vehicle's operating autonomously, and was curious if there's anything.
No, you don't want that. You don't want that, right? You don't want. I mean, we've all seen what people do to Waymos and Cruisers. They kind of get in front of it because, like, what's the car gonna do? Run you over?
Yeah, I don't want that.
They
either,
trash the cars. You don't want your Tesla to be seen as an autonomous car. You want your Tesla to fit in to a world that's designed for humans. Brandon?
Yeah, I kind of want to go back on the supercharging thing because I think that's kind of interesting. Maybe I don't know if it's so much as a step back, but maybe it's kind of like a rebuilding. I would think maybe the situation with Hawaii the other day had something to do with it, because someone's like, "Why is there one supercharger here?" So maybe you would restructure full self driving from the ground up with a different stack. Maybe that's what he's going to do with the charging. He might just try to figure out a better way to make them, or to roll them out faster, or to make money off of it.
Yeah, let's get Omar's view real quick. Omar, what do you think about the supercharge? Most of the supercharging team being laid off.
You know, I'm waiting for the full story. It definitely seems like Rebecca Tanucci and 500 people from the team were laid off. You can see a lot of them posting on LinkedIn and Twitter. But as we've seen with the story of the affordable car, the story is not often what it appears from the headlines. It was reported that the affordable car was canceled. Oh my God, that's catastrophic. They canceled the new model. What are we going to do? Oh, it turns out they're actually accelerating the car. The story was actually the opposite of that. So when you see a story like Tesla's firing the supercharger team and getting out of superchargers, I kind of raise an eyebrow a little bit. I think Elon said in the email that the information quoted that they would continue to build new chargers where it's critical and to finish the construction of existing chargers. I'm not sure how they do that if the whole team is gone, right? Clearly, there's somebody on the team who's going to be capable of getting that done. So it's certainly an interesting piece of information. It sounds like he's really impressing on executives that they need to get serious about cost cutting or they will be let go, right? If you have more than 3 people on your team who are not excellent, trustworthy, and what was the other one? Necessary.
Excellent. Yeah, necessary.
Yeah, if you have more than 3 people on your team who don't meet those tests, then you're going to be asked to resign tomorrow morning.
Exactly.
So he's really impressing a strong cost-cutting discipline on him. I've received DMs from people and they said, "Oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. Landlords are going to sue, et cetera, et cetera." But you often sometimes hear a commotion like this when people get let go because they kind of get upset and they want to make a big deal out of it. But Elon would not have let them go if he thought what they were doing was important. So let's say they have an average compensation of $100,000. 500 people times $100,000, that's $50 million a year, right? That's 1,000 DGX H100s. Then think about, all the spending they're doing, capital outlay to build out these new superchargers. And then, do we necessarily need them if sales aren't growing as fast as expected? Plus, there's really the strategy shift around robotaxi. Like, what is the future of the charging build out? Should we really be building new chargers that aren't ready for self-charging? Maybe wireless charging or something else. Maybe there's some other strategy change we don't know about. I don't know. So it's an interesting story, but I'm waiting for more clarity from Elon on what they're doing, what they're expecting. Maybe they're planning on just selling hardware to people like BP and others to build out the network. I'm not sure, but the story is interesting, but I'm taking it with a grain of salt.
Machine, are you excellent, necessary? We know you're not trustworthy.
Definitely not in the context of Tesla. Neither is Omar, since apparently Elon unfollowed him, which is just amazing.
These layoffs go deep.
Nobody's
safe.
I mean, exactly. So I mean, what my point is, of course, it's nothing personal, Omar.
Can I tell you a story? So Elon used to follow me in 2019, and then about a month or two later, he unfollowed. Right. Whenever I say that to somebody, they go, "And he unfollowed you?" They focus on the last part, which is always really interesting to me. That's always been the case, without exception. Instead of focusing like, "Oh my God, he followed you? Oh my God, he followed you for 2 months?" Or they're like, "Oh my God, he unfollowed you?" Which is really amazing to me. It's like never skips a beat. And yet, again, you're up on the speaker board and focusing on Elon unfollowing Omar?
Well, I'm trying to make. But by the way, I didn't know that he followed you at any point, and when I just heard that, my instinct was like, "Oh my god, he followed you at some point." Not that he unfollowed you. Of course, he would unfollow you. I can't believe he followed you. But my point was that this is actually, it's not about Omar, but it's about this overall viewpoint that Musk has about operating not just his companies, but his worldview, which I partially get. And it's sort of, nihilistic, but it's really about understanding efficiencies and the way societies are constructed and companies are constructed. When they get inefficient, it's very hard to make them efficient by just weaning off a little bit here and there. Unfortunately, it's very hard to do. And so, I made this joke. I don't know if you saw it. I made this tweet joke about how he visited the president, prime minister, whatever of Argentina. Oh my God, Argentina. And that guy is this libertarian who's like has these meme videos where he's taking all the all the parts of the government and tearing them off a noteboard, saying, "I'm getting rid of this, I'm getting rid of that." And the fact is that when you're so messed up like Argentina, you might have to do that. And so he's seeing Tesla right now with, it's not making as much money. The economic situation is not great. And he's looking at things and saying, do I just kind of slowly pull the Band-Aid off, or do I tear it off? And he knows for some parts he has to just tear it off. So I get that. My question is, there's got to be something more to the supercharging thing, because that's taking away basically, it seems like, the whole program. And that's just hard for me to understand. But I actually had a question, which was, I missed this whole last week. I listened to earnings. I don't understand the interpretation that in reality that the compact car is coming sooner. Because my read on it was actually they're going to be making mostly cheaper versions or something like a Model 3, Model Y, because it's going to be on those production lines. And I don't think anytime soon they're making a compact car on those lines. Not in the next year. I think that's his interpretation to pump the stock, in my opinion.
All right. In live chat, Alan Mobley says, "Long live machine is definitely necessary." Omar?
A new version of the Model 3 or the Model Y would not be a new model. That would be the Model 3 or the Model Y. This is a new model. New models.
And you really think they're going to suddenly have?
Did you even listen to the call, Machine? Did you
really
listen?
think
They said we have new motors, we have the new battery pack, we have.
Did you listen, Machine? Did you listen?
3 and Y.
And you think these are all going to happen in a year? They just change plans, and all of a sudden you have new cars on existing lines within a year?
You realize they were working on this car for a long time, right? They're just taking the same car, but they're not building a new production line. They're using the existing production line. That saves the time that it would have taken to build and ramp the new production system.
So
that's all they're saying.
I get that can happen. I just don't think that can happen in a year. So when they say their next one, the first one's coming within a year, you think that's a full new model that's totally different from Model 3 and Model Y? Like not even using the same wheelbase, dimensions, nothing?
Yeah, from what I've heard, it's smaller than the 3 and Y. So, they've been working on this for quite a while. They plan to build it using the unbox process. It was supposed to go into production end of 2025 with the unbox process. Suppliers were being told June 2025, you need to start supplying parts. By 2026, you need to supply enough for 10,000 a week. Now they're just saying, okay, only the robotaxi is going to be built on unboxed. That'll be unveiled on 8/8. The new, more affordable models, they're still going to have the steer-by-wire, the new battery architecture, the new motors without any rare earths, all that stuff that we designed. Only difference is we're going to build it on the existing 3 and Y production lines rather than using the unboxed process. And then, in terms of Musk's targets, he's saying early 2025, if not by the end of the year. We all know that Musk gives aggressive targets. If the schedule is tight, it's right. If it's long, it's wrong. Is he going to make the target by end of the year or early next year? Probably not. It very well may slip. But if you tell them they have until the end of 2025, then it's going to be 2026. If you tell them this year, it might actually come out next year.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, apologies to the others raising their hands. Because Omar and Machine have been coming here every single day for the last 2 years. I got to give them, and they have a good conversation going on right now. Machine, go ahead.
So when do you think the team knew that this change was going to happen? Like Lars and all the engineering work that has to go in. When do you think that started? That would, for this change to go on these production lines, requires a lot of engineering work that would be different than making a whole new line on the unbox method. So when do you think that decision was made and the work starting on making a vehicle on the existing production lines?
From what I understand, Lars and some of the other members of the team proposed it during Q1, and they discussed it and decided to go ahead with the plan to utilize their existing factory footprint without as much capex.
Yeah, so I believe that. I find it hard to believe that in less than a year they can go from that point to producing these new vehicles, especially because they weren't even supposed to be producing it supply chain wise for another year after that.
Yeah.
So how does that make sense?
Machine. I think he's getting ready for a recession. All his moves is getting ready for a recession.
Exactly. He's getting ready. Yeah. This is more about the fact that the existing production lines are under capacity. They have planned to sell more Model 3 and Model Y, and they can't. And Model 3 is kind of a disaster, but even though it's a great vehicle.
Well, it's an amazing vehicle.
Yes.
I don't know what you mean by disaster.
Oh, disaster.
But it's an amazing vehicle.
Let me explain it to you.
Yeah.
You guys don't really understand what's happening. Model 3, yet again, in the US, is production constrained. They are limiting production of this vehicle. This is not about, we have some mistake. We can't produce it because of white seats. They already had that excuse the beginning of last quarter and then started ramping it. Now it's slowed again. And
yeah, I agree.
It does
I
make
agree.
sense. No, do you understand why it makes sense? There's no
Yeah,
EV credit for the long range. Okay, no one's going to buy it. It's just a huge difference from last year. And so he's seeing all this production capacity, and he's like, man, we're going to lose money. Yeah, we'll add some more vehicles to these lines. And I think that's I'm glad they made that explanation, because otherwise it was looking really bleak for understanding how they were going to grow it all next year. So that is a positive.
Okay, let's go to the other hands. Brandon, Rio, Joey.
Yeah, so this was the insight Omar's. For like a week, what's her name? Rebecca Tanucci. She was reporting to Elon for like a week after he said, or that thing was shared that all the executives were now reporting to him. And then she lasted about a week. So maybe she said something incredibly stupid, or Elon asked her a question, or how are we going to expand the Supercharger for the robo-taxi network? And she goes, and then he goes, okay, you and your entire team are fired because you hired them. And so I think he clearly is spending more time with Tesla, even though he claims that he never left really. And he was, like at Tesla 3 days a week or something like that. I think he's making more observations now than he was.
Good. Rio.
Hey guys, so I just wanted to throw in something. I have experience working on the supercharging team, and just this is kind of how I see it. The supercharging organization was basically 10% of Tesla's capex, and it was 1 or 2% of revenue. So obviously, I think that's really where the cuts are coming. I don't really think it's the employees, cost. I think it's the capex, the infrastructure. Number two, the program was really based on, I think, higher sales, higher EV sales, kind of based on 21, 22 Tesla sales, and then obviously the other OEMs selling a lot of EVs as well. And number three, Drew is really the driving force of the organization and the one who would really kind of talk to Elon and kind of get things passed through. So I think once he was gone, it was probably the writing on the wall that that team would get crushed.
Thank you. How long were you there?
Over a couple years. Yeah, just left recently, but yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely. I think when the sales slowed of the cars, that's, you know, really the supercharging network is actually very large already, and in certain areas, you know, SoCal and maybe Northern California, you know, they could still maybe use a little bit more, but a lot of parts of the country, I think, with the sales kind of, you know, not going up as much as expected, Elon probably thought it was fine to, you know, pump the brakes for a couple of years. But I will add that I do think, speaking to kind of what Omar was saying, I do think that it is going to be a nightmare because there's a lot of contractual obligations all over the place, and without anyone to kind of work on those things, I think it's going to be pretty tough for Tesla.
Okay. Thank you, Rio. It's nice to have your experience working at Tesla on the speaker board so that we don't have to listen to machine speculate endlessly. Joey?
Hey, Yamin, thank you again. So yeah, just kind of circling back to the unboxing process. Just kind of want to get your opinion, possibly Omar as well. I just want to see if you guys think, because we've been hearing about the unboxing process for a while. Do we think it's actually going to produce a lower factory footprint and cheaper manufacturing, or is it going to be like similar to the 4680 kind of idea?
Well, if you kind of think about what it involves versus 4680s, 4680 required a lot of innovation, and unboxing, I feel like they can't test it. It doesn't really require like deep level of technology innovation. So it should be easier to implement. But let's see what Omar then Machine has to say.
Yeah, I think the unbox process was a major risk to the introduction of Tesla's more affordable models. It just has never been done before. So you can say on paper this is going to work, but nobody's ever done it. So when somebody's never done something before, you run into all kinds of problems that people didn't tell you about, right? Like with the moving production line, there's a lot of people you can hire. They know how to do that type of production system. With this, it's a little untested. So it was almost guaranteed that it would slow down the rollout of the affordable vehicle, and there would be all kinds of challenges and disasters associated with ramping it up. But then maybe once they figured it out, then yes, you have these benefits of lower factory footprint, lower cost, etc. And they said, look, okay, we're not going to build these affordable vehicles on the unbox process. We're only going to build the robotaxi on the unbox process. So this is going to increase our cost a little bit. We're not going to achieve a 50% cost reduction. So, maybe it's a $30,000 vehicle instead of a $25,000 vehicle or something. But we're able to build it on the existing production line. We're able to outlay less CapEx. So I think really they're de-risking the introduction of these new products. The robotaxi will continue to be built using the unbox process, and they can sort of refine that production process and get some stats on how it really works. But that's not as much of a risk given the sort of regulatory uncertainties with the robotaxi, as well as the software, being ready or not being ready. That one, it's a lot less of an issue if production ramp up is a little slower because, for example, you may only need to make robotaxis for the US market initially or only for the China market. So I think that's a lot less risky. And, moving the other vehicles off the unbox process de-risks it at the expense of not achieving all of the cost reduction goals they had in mind.
Thank you. Chansu.
Hey, just on the supercharging, so I can wait.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, just based on what Rio said, I think it's from fundamental sort of shift in in their sort of strategy. If you look at the IRA sort of EV charging credits that the government is giving out, Tesla only receives like very small portion of it. So it might make more sense for them to just go business to business and sell the hardware to other businesses and then let them get those credits so they can make the delta in between. So they don't have to worry about paperwork and all that.
Omar, what do you think about that?
Yeah, maybe.
Brandon.
Yeah, I think perhaps maybe since they're not going to do the inbox method for these cars, maybe it's not the time. Maybe with the like macroeconomic environment, and then in the future, for instance, like with the new factory in Austin, the structural Model Y is kind of the Model Y, but different than the Model Y. Still the Model Y, but they just made it differently. So perhaps in the future they'll make more lines in Austin or in Mexico or in India that are going to use the unbox method for the same vehicles that they're going to make on the production line that already exists.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Our resident bear in YouTube live chat just said Cybertruck, he characterized Cybertruck rollout as poor. And just curious, Omar, what would you rate this Cybertruck rollout out of 10? Cybertruck production ramp.
Rollout
out of
in
10.
terms of the ramp?
I think he means as roll. Yeah, I think that's what he means, production ramp.
Well, I mean, I think they're on track to being the best-selling electric truck in the country as early as Q2. So, 1,000 Cybertrucks a week is the burst rate they've achieved. If they can sustain that burst rate over the quarter, Ford only did 7,000 Lightnings, and they're the number one selling electric truck. So, best-selling truck within 2 quarters, best-selling electric truck, not bad. Would I like to see more? Yes. But I think they're making the right moves. 4680 production is ahead of General Assembly. I think that was a major concern for people, how 4680 ramp would be doing. 4680 staying ahead of General Assembly is great to see. And that is not easy. It really speaks to all the work the charging team was doing there. People love the Cybertruck. I've been driving it just today. It has a smoother ride than the Mercedes EQS. Okay. And that's the Mercedes, very smooth. They pride themselves on ride comfort. Tesla Cybertruck is better. And I was watching the Cybertruck today, and I went and I got lunch. And then I had an Uber driver drop me back off at the car wash. And it was this Asian woman, and she was in a Model 3. And she said, "Oh, are you getting your car washed? What's your car?" And I said, "Oh, it's a Cybertruck." And she's like, "Oh my God, I want to get that next. I put my order in. I'm going to trade my Model 3 for it and get a Cybertruck. I'm going to get the base model, 60K. And I was like, wow, like this thing has way broader appeal than people realize. I could see it becoming the best selling truck because it's not just a truck, contractors and truck people love it too. But you see celebrities, random people, women love it, surprisingly. Like they just find it really comfortable. It's got a purse area. So I see this thing when it's ramped actually outselling the Model Y in the US. As crazy as that sounds. Like this, I've never seen a product like this where people are so magnetically attracted to it. Everywhere you go, people are asking me about it. They want to know about it. They want to sit in it. You can't go anywhere. Like people are coming up to you. It's just a smash hit, honestly. And everyone said, "Oh, this is ugly. It's going to be a flop. It's going to be a disaster." Who predicted they'd be selling them out at $100,000, right? More than double the price they announced, and they can't even produce enough. So I think they really knocked it out of the park. And when you drive the Cybertruck, you'll see it's the best Tesla by far.
I agree. Great. There you go, Paul. Mr. Bear. About Tesla says, let's go to spring release. I pinned at the top of our screens the post by About Tesla, who says 2024.14.3 spring release is out, going to first 1% of Teslas outside North America for now. Too early to tell which FSD version is included. Then 2024.3.25 with FSD V12.3.6 and new auto park went out to 35% of Hardware 3 cars in the US and Canada.
Also,
About
it looks
Tesla?
like
Yeah.
CZ from Binance got 4 months in prison.
All right. About Tesla, would you like to elaborate on the spring rollout?
Sure. So basically, so the spring release that we've been waiting for so long, I guess, is out. But unfortunately, it's so far it's only going to other countries. So there's nothing in the U.S. or Canada. There is one single car that I saw at TeslaFi that showed up in this country, a Model 3. But I suspect it's just maybe an employee vehicle that is using TeslaFi by mistake. So that would be my guess. So it's too early to tell if they're rolling it out in this country. Hopefully it will be coming soon. So I assume this is the same version that will go everywhere. They just started in Europe and Asia, Australia, pretty much everywhere outside North America. But the problem for us is that until we see it in the US, until someone gets the software installed, we cannot even tell which FSD version is included. Because it's obviously it comes with FSD, most likely it comes with FSD included, but until you enable it, you cannot see even which version that is. So there are speculations about what version it can come with.
Okay. Well, when you have the information, you're welcome to request to speak and share with all of us.
Absolutely.
If you have any questions about software releases, which version, why you don't have it, what you can do, follow About Tesla, underrated accounts, data-oriented, facts-based, very generous with his time. And I'm trying to limit the number of the same question he gets every day by giving him a few minutes to kind of explain. If you have any questions about these things, want to understand them better, request to speak now. Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Yaman. Hope you're doing well. About Tesla, I just wanted to ask about the spring release. Did the notes come out? Were they released on what's in the release? I know at some point there was one feature that I'm actually kind of really hoping for, and that's the reduction in energy use on Sentry mode. They talked about that feature, adding that feature at some point. Do you know if that's in the spring release?
You can look at they have published release notes at some websites, and you can actually check to see what's included or not. The problem is that because it's a general release that goes everywhere to all cars, all countries, it's really hard to tell what specifically will be included in a certain area or a certain type of the car. So we have the release notes from Europe already because that's where it's, and the rest of the world where it's already shipping. But I think we had the leaked notes from employees in the past, but again, we don't have the final version. I don't think that has been released yet. And so we should see it soon. So it should be coming hopefully in the next, if not today, then, later this week.
Thank you, Dallas.
Are there any notable differences in 12.3.5 versus 12.3.6? Just I was in the crew that got the 3.5. I'm just curious.
Omar.
It does feel a little bit more human-like, smooth, comfortable, natural, but I could just be imagining it. I don't know. I think they're A/B testing 12.3.5 and 12.3.6 to figure out which one's better. They're pretty similar. They're only a week apart, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But I'm hopeful that the reason that the spring update hasn't rolled out in North America yet is that they're going to be rolling it out with 12.4 and Smart Summon. But it also seems, we haven't seen it roll out to employees or anything unless it's been done in secret. So I could also see it rolling out with 12.3.6 or 12.3.7.
Omar, what were you going to say before?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Tommy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I got 0.5 yesterday, and then this morning I got 0.6. So I don't know if the A/B testing theory is accurate.
Did you get a chance to drive the 5?
Yeah, I did it on like one drive, and overall it seems just better and better. It's hard to put your finger on, what exactly is getting better, but
Yeah.
I guess I can also mention I
think
tried the auto park and it was terrible for me. It just did not work at all whatsoever. It was going in the wrong direction, and I don't know if it's because I have a bike rack mounted to my back and I have the ultrasonic sensors, so I got to figure that out.
How about Tesla?
Just one important difference is it's not directly related to FSD V12 the way we think of it, but it's about this auto park. So it now has the auto park feature, the new vision-based auto park that is now available to older cars with USS sensors. So that's new in .6 release,
Yeah.
and it's part of the FSD essentially because it's also I guess it's vision, object detection, and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think these improvements, I mean, unless they're introducing new features, like Omar says, maybe with 12.4, we'll get ability to reverse. But I think the improvements are mostly going to be seen fleet-wide from now on, not on an individual basis. And that's really what matters for Tesla's purposes at this point. Dallas?
Do you find it to be a better practice to let these updates come without force checking? Because the only way I got that one today was because I went out and did what they call force check for update. Do you guys do that at all?
Omar?
It doesn't matter. You can check in the software tab if you want. You can wait if you want. There's no harm to checking. A lot of people think that it only checks once every 24 hours. So if they check, they use their check for the day, but they can still push it to you anyway. So check the software tab if you like. Wait and check the app if you like. Connect to Wi-Fi, that helps. But mostly you just don't have any control over it. It just comes when it comes.
David Katz.
Hello. I just want to clarify that this is, I think, .6 is the first update that has a difference depending on if you have the older Intel Atom chip or the Ryzen chip. The newer self-park feature does not work on the Atom chip, unless I'm wrong, Omar.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I kind of did remember hearing something about that. I'm not sure if it's just that the visualization can't run on the Atom computers for the 3D Park Assist or what, but yeah, that could be the case.
I think it is the visualization, but people need to think when they buy a used car that it's important to buy 22 or more to get some improvements. Things change so fast.
Yeah, I recommend buying a used Tesla with Ryzen, as it seems like the Atoms are no longer being supported fully.
Tomato.
Yes, thanks for taking my question. I have a question about the voting proxy. I called my broker this morning and asked why I have not received it yet. And their explanation to me was that the delay is through Tesla. Does anybody have any info on when the proxies are coming out?
You have until the shareholder meeting to vote. You can even vote in person at the shareholder meeting if you want. So this thing just went out. Don't be alarmed if you haven't received it yet. Maybe if it's, been a few weeks and you still haven't received it, but they're still working their ways out.
Thank you.
Yeah, we should have one person per day when they receive the email, request to speak, tell us your broker, and that you receive the email. And this will be our daily reminder. And we can do it that way.
Yeah, I was able to vote my shares yesterday.
Good. And then you can also call your broker, see where's my email. Jimmy.
I received my vote yesterday. You can auto park the Intel Atom. So My Model Y, which is an Intel Atom, and 3 both have Intel Atoms, and the auto park feature does work on those. Does it work well? It's to be debatable.
Is it the new auto park or the old auto park?
I never have ever seen any auto park ever, except when I was on 12.3.4.
Thank you. If you're on YouTube Live, please smash that like button. Ad revenue from YouTube Live allows the space to be free and open for everybody. Bruce.
Yeah, I got the voting on Robinhood yesterday, and I just got voted. I have a follow-up question. Do you guys find the auto park performing enough to use it? I just think it's too slow for me to actually use it.
Yeah, it needs to speed up. No doubt about it. I mean, unless somebody's really bad at, parallel parking and they just don't trust themselves, then they can use it, right? But for an average person to use it, it has to be, I think, at least 2 times faster, which I think it will get there eventually. Meta, what do you think?
Yeah, I
Meta's
think it will.
working.
Yeah.
Are you working?
In and out.
Okay.
No, in and out mentally. If you say my name,
No.
I'll focus. But you guys
Okay.
often ask the question and say the name at the end instead of at the front.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been in your shoes in other spaces, and it's probably better if you stay on listener mode, and I'll see you on listener mode, and then I'll bring you up if you have a question. Jimmy.
Auto park works great if you have a spouse who doesn't know how to park and you like to keep your car nice and shiny and not all scratched.
Look, I mean, priority number 1, don't hit anything. Imagine you turn on auto park for the first time and it floors the accelerator straight into another car. Would you be like, wow, that was so fast? No, you'd be like, that sucked. So first you start off slow. Once everyone says, okay, it looks good, then you can increase the speed.
I generally agree with the starting slow, take the precautious routes because this is a sensitive things and require people to get used to it. But I think on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, it's probably at like 2 or 3, but I think you can go to like maybe 4 or 5 to be a little bit faster. So I think there is a dial. It's not a on or off, right? Like extremely fast or extremely slow. I think it's
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah.
Let me tell you, it's not going to get slower. It's only going to
Yep.
get faster from here.
You never know. You never know. Well, thank you, Bruce. Again, I remind everybody that Tesla team has 1,000,000 times more data, and they see all the regulations, all the risks that we may not see. Reggie.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Yaman. Yeah, everyone, it needs to be slow right now. This is how you drive adoption. My wife uses it 100 times when she parks at the hospital. That's the only thing she uses to park because they can't park in Ford, so she has to bag up. It drives adoption. The next thing she's going to ask for when she gets comfortable with that, like, hey, what is this FSD thing? I want to try that out. So it takes steps. I know we're advanced and we want everything super quick, but I like the approach they're taking with this because it just drives adoption. And if you want to park faster, you can park yourself. So that's my
Thank
thoughts
you,
on.
Reggie. That's great. Robert Lopinto is reporting in the replies that he got the Robinhood vote request received yesterday, and he voted his shares. So if you have a Robinhood account, you may have also received your vote request. There you go. Jimmy, you're back.
Yes, I don't know. Was I kicked out yesterday or I don't know.
I just have to kind of keep an eye on people who tend to go on and on. What do you have to say today? What do you think about the Supercharger layoffs?
I saw a few of them actually posted on Twitter saying that they got laid off and were looking for new jobs. I think quite often many of these things are, if you worked at any big IT company before, it's not uncommon for a mature product to over time get outsourced or over time move into a cheaper area for development. I mean, it is a mature product already. And then the teams to be reassembled, rearranged, sent over to other teams, and to basically be packed up. It's not uncommon. It happens a lot at Microsoft and Google. A lot of the layoffs in Google were not really layoffs, right? They moved a lot. See, Meta, yeah, he has his thumb up. They move a lot of their team over, for example, to other locations.
Hey, Jimmy, let me ask you something. What do you think about, let me ask you more of your expertise area. Can you tell us a little bit about what the recent news about FSD in China means to Tesla and to Tesla investors?
Well, it means two things. Security is one thing. There will be many issues in geopolitics in the next 10 years between China and the US, but that backing by Shanghai means that Tesla will be immune to those issues, which is very important because it means that Tesla is part of the. So right now there is a new plenum. I think it's the third one that will discuss the next 5-year plan for China and its long-term economic outlook. This is a very important event. So it's a Communist Party meeting. And basically what happens is the different committees meet. So for example, the Shanghai committee is one of the leading committees. And they will talk about different issues like foreign companies like Tesla, what it contributes to the Chinese economy, how they support those companies, how they will grow them, how they will help Chinese companies. And FSD and autonomous driving will be brought up for sure, along with AI. And there will be essentially secret plans about how they will help those companies. But in those plans, the reason why this meeting took place is because the plenum is beginning. It will begin very soon. They're meeting right now, I think, in Beijing for the pre-meeting. And they wanted to announce this so that when they would go into the meeting, they would say, we've already arranged these things with Tesla and other companies, and that autonomous driving is the future. And we need foreign companies to help develop those things. There are different cliques within the Communist Party who don't like that, who don't like foreign companies and so forth, but they are quite small, to be honest, compared to the Shanghai Committee. So that's one, security. Number two, I think, is the data itself. There were, last 5 years, national security concerns about the data for FSD. And if the data can be widely available, if it can be added to Tesla along with other Chinese companies who have the same ability to use their own autonomous driving data, right, to build out their models within Shanghai, and it can be proven that it can be secure, that data protection exists, that it will not hurt China's national security in any way. What it means is there will be additional investment by other provinces for Tesla. There has been a lot of speculation that Tesla may open up a second China factory. And the Shanghai Committee actually is very supportive of another factory in another province. It's allied province, for example, Nanjing, or for example, in the south, let's say, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's break it up. Meta?
Yeah, I think for myself as a refresher and others, it could be helpful. We could also say this is not, people go do their homework, but would it be helpful, Yaman, to go through like what the parliamentary system is very briefly?
Yeah.
And how the decisions are made, like how a bill becomes a law, if you will?
Absolutely. Jimmy?
Okay, so the question for me?
Yeah,
so
and
essentially,
I'm gonna put time limits on you. Okay.
Okay.
I respect your expertise. This is not meant as a disrespect, but I have to balance it too. So 2 minutes, or let's say 3 minutes to explain the answer to the question Meta asked, which is how does the process happen in China? How does it differ from US? And how does it how is the law made?
Oh, okay. So essentially, from the very top down, there is a state council. And this state council is the executive control over China's cabinet. And so that is essentially the very top. But then below that, there is the central committee. And then below that is the Communist Party and its different meetings, right? So the premier, for example, of China, he has a lot of power in terms of what he proposes to the state council. And when the state council passes something, that effectively becomes law. Now, there are other ways of things getting passed that become law, but that is considered to be the most The law from the state council is national law that must be followed through. Now, there are these things called national people's congresses, and this is the highest part of the government in terms of how different committees from the different provinces organize together and vote on what powers the state council can have. So, for example, when it came to AI and tech in the last 5 years, the NPC, the National People's Congress, gave power to the state council to regulate certain things, right? It's a very large legislative group. It's almost 3,000 people. And it goes to the Great Hall of the People in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. And then below that, there are the different committees from the different provinces who elect people to go to this NPC, this National People's Congress. So that's essentially how it works.
Thank you. Meta, any other questions?
No, that was really well put. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Actually, one other question. Can you help us understand how many committees there are? Like, so there's a Shanghai committee. Is it one per province? Which are the ones that actually matter? Because, like, sometimes, there's influence. Just your opinion on it.
So every province obviously has their own committee, but not every province is the same. So there are, for example, autonomous provinces. Some of the provinces are quite big, right? Some of the provinces are the size of countries, very large countries. But in the Central Committee of the Communist Party, there is about 200 members as well as some alternate members. And again, they're elected by the NPC. And so they're collectively the national cabinet, essentially, of the Chinese state. Now, different committees like Shanghai, like Gongzhou, for example, the most powerful ones, send people to the Central Committee. And those people on the Central Committee represent their interests. When provinces essentially compete with one another, they have different ways in which they invest, subsidize, they own different things, stakes and equity in companies, so many different ways in which they compete. They, for example, send chambers of commerce around the world to advertise and to allow custom zones. They don't need approval from the top. When it comes to laws, the way in which they basically get those laws passed is those different committees make sure that their interests which are represented is fairly distributed according to the institutions of power in China. So the most powerful provinces have the most influential posts within the Central Committee. Xi Jinping, as the leader, he's the orchestrator, right? He can do quite a lot. He can start corruption investigations, for example. He's in charge of foreign policy. He can fire people. China has a very different way in which they do cabinets. So, for example, Xi Jinping appoints someone who is in charge of a certain ministry, right? But the person who's the foreign minister will be elected by the Central Committee, but he can fire that person, right? So the most important provinces, which Shanghai is by far the most important, have, I would say, 50% of the most important positions in the Central Committee. And that's kind of how it works. I hope that makes sense.
Jimmy, is Xi Jinping more powerful in China than Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey?
No, he's not.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
I mean,
stuff.
the only way that would logically happen, I would say, though, now, Erdogan is losing a lot of power because Istanbul, he no longer controls. They'd be kind of like if Shanghai and all the other cities were merged into one, and Xi Jinping only had control of a smaller city, Ankara, right? But still, Erdogan, his presidential powers are very strong. He has complete control over the military, over the judicial system, over even legislative systems and so forth. Something Xi Jinping never had control of. Again, it's very autonomous and decentralized when it comes to the economic policies. When it comes to foreign policy, he has a lot of power. But when it comes to economic policies, if certain provinces elect to do things like invite an American company come in and give them subsidies, there's nothing that Xi Jinping can do.
Meta.
Jimmy, can you confirm Xi Jinping is from Shanghai, right? Is he still like? Is it a Is he like
You
from a
know, it's a
Shanghai
very
Community
complicated
Party?
history.
Or?
He's an old man. He,
Mhm.
obviously, the Cultural Revolution had a big effect on him. Yes, he originally is. His parents come from that clique. It's true. But when he was rising up the Communist Party ranks, he was with other cliques. He had support from other institutions of power. For example, the banking system. For example, the Chinese oil and refinery companies, things like that, based in Beijing. If you go today to Beijing, Blackstone, other companies are based there. A lot of financial institutions are based there. Those are the types of companies that back him. But Shanghai's always been about exports, always been about manufacturing. Those types of companies did not back him. Obviously, because he's not the most liberal when it comes to economic policies. And he's also not someone who focused his career, because Li Qiang, for example, the premier of, the leader of Shanghai, his entire career has been devoted to bringing companies into China. How many companies did Xi Jinping bring into China? So it's true, culturally speaking, yes. But in terms of power, no.
Okay, and then culturally speaking, Xi Jinping has a lot of influence over Beijing, right? The Beijing province. And if I understand correctly, those you just need to really win those two provinces, and then laws change.
Yeah, that's true. The institutions' power are very straightforward. The banking system, the military, and energy, right? Xi Jinping has 2 out of 3. So the military has always been very closely associated with Shanghai for, exports, protection, strategic defense. A lot of the ships are made there, for example, many of the new Chinese aircraft carriers and so forth. But yeah, he has a lot of power for sure.
And Shanghai also has their equivalent of Hollywood, right? Like they have a
Oh yeah, it's
stranglehold
huge.
over their culture. Yeah.
Thank you, Jimmy. All right. We're going to leave that there for now. Thank you very much and welcome back in town. All right, let's see. What else did I want to talk about today? Meta, while I have you here, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just to put a button on why I think that conversation, the reason why I asked those questions is I think sometimes there's a perception that in China, on a whim, Tesla could get kicked out or technology could be stolen or what have you. And I think those are irrational fears to a degree. It's coming from a lack of understanding how it actually works. And so more people understand things, the less they're afraid of it, just like FSD.
Perfect. Perfect. I like it. Thank you for putting that button on. What do you think about Andy Jassy's tweet about Amazon Q?
I didn't see the tweet. What is the tweet?
I pinned it at the top. Let me just read this out loud real quick. When we started AWS, we looked at the undesirable situation of developers spending 70% of their time on the undifferentiated muck of managing infrastructure versus 30% on what differentiated their customer experiences, and aimed to flip that equation on its head. It's made a pretty big difference in innovation and developer productivity. Roughly 18 years later, we're trying to solve another 70-30 like misalignment for developers, where developers are telling us that they're spending roughly 70% of their time on repetitive and tedious tasks and code. Today, we're launching the general availability of Amazon Q, the world's most capable Gen AI-powered assistant for accelerating software development and leveraging companies' internal data. And that aims to remove much of the muck of repetitive and tedious coding and data tasks for developers and employees at large. On the software development side, Q doesn't just generate code, it also tests code, debugs coding conflicts, and transforms code from one form to another. Today, developers can save months using Q to move from older versions of Java to newer, more secure and capable ones in the near future. Q will help developers transform their .NET code as well. Q agents does multi-step planning and reasoning to allow developers to string together multiple requests and have Q implement them. On the internal data side, most companies have voluminous troves of internally relevant data that resides in wikis, intranet pages, Salesforce, storage repositories like Amazon S3, and a bevy of other data stores and SaaS apps that are hard to access. It makes answering straightforward questions about company policies, products, business results, code, people, and many other topics hard and frustrating. Q makes this much simpler. You can point Q at all of your enterprise data repositories and still search all this data, summarize logically, and analyze trends and engage in dialogue with customers about it. we also introduced today about a powerful new capability called Q apps, which lets employees describe in natural language what apps they want to build on top of this internal data, and Q apps will quickly generate that app. This is going to make it so much easier for internal teams to build useful apps from their own data. Customers are gravitating Q, and we're already seeing companies like Brightcove, British Telecom, Datadog, GitLab, GoDaddy, National Australia Bank, NCS, NetSmart, Slalom, Smartsheet, Sun Life, Tyler Consulting Services, Toyota, and Wiz using Q, and we've only been in beta till today. Very exciting about Q will change what's possible for our customers and being a part of help them more quickly. What do you think?
I think these are great claims. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, as the whole saying goes. You could actually see how it goes. I would make the claim that if they truly figured out how to do tests and all that kind of stuff as they describe for complex tasks, then they've solved AGI, right? That's not likely what they're saying. What I think they're saying is, data migrations and various things like that. And that's great. We've seen that a fair bit. In general, it is my opinion that if you're spending most of your time plumbing code or typing up your code, you're not working on a complex engineering problem.
Is this similar to GitHub then? What are they trying to compete against here?
Oh, that's a good question. So, three things from what I hear. One is like internal wikis, like basically maybe an internal search engine, if you will. So instead of like searching through the docs and things and trying to understand what's written where, you could ask this thing a question and it will read all your internal documents, manuals and FAQs and give you an answer, hopefully not hallucinating. So that's a useful thing, right? You could argue that's competing now.
I meant Microsoft Copilot. Is it competition to Microsoft Copilot?
Yeah, so that's one of the other two things that it's competing with. Yeah, so it's doing three things as described. So they're naming it one thing, but I'm sure it's three different things under the hood. One of them is competing with Copilot, and then the last one is competing with arguably GitHub in a sense.
Gotcha. And does this news make you think Amazon is further ahead or further behind than where you thought they are in AI?
This does not change my perception of Amazon's position.
Okay, perfect. So we can move on. What else we got?
I will say one thing. That post mischaracterized history, per my understanding. Amazon did not start trying to make AWS in order to solve the misalignment that engineers had on a 70-30 side, right? There are other industry leads, like Amazon didn't create Bazel. They didn't create like all the infrastructure stuff that people tend to use for those purposes. If they had started there, it would have probably come out of their company. What Amazon did was they realized most people shop during the same hours. And so they had to have a lot of servers to serve all those resources. And when they couldn't serve those resources, so they had to buy all those machines. And then when everybody was sleeping, there was all these machines just lying around doing nothing. So they said, why don't we rent those out to people who can figure out something to do with them, and we'll make some money from there. And you can imagine companies like, just consider like a YouTube, right? Or other many companies that need to do like, say, video compression and processing, audio processing, Hollywood companies making like the Shrek movie, etc. They have all this batch work where they don't care when it gets done, but they just have like endless amounts of work to be done. They'll go ahead and say, okay, yeah, sure, we'll rent your machines at the times when it's available and we'll get the work done that we want to get done. And we'll pay you and we'll help subsidize it because we don't want to go buy all the machines ourselves.
Okay, great. Any questions? Please request to speak.
By the way, that's a good proxy for how we can think about what Tesla could eventually do with their edge or total compute cluster. Because the build out of the training compute is going to be much constrained if they try to build it out for like longevity. But if they overbuild it, they can speed up how fast they get to FSD and Optimus. And then when they're done having overbuilt it, they could rent out the excess supply when they don't need it. And you'll probably see it come in waves where when they start working on a foundational model, the spot pricing goes up because they're using a lot of the machines. And when they're done working with it, it goes back down. or they blend it.
Sounds good. All new cars in the U.S. must have automatic emergency braking by 2029, says Sawyer. The NHTSA says mandate could save 360 lives a year and prevent 24,000 injuries. Okay. Tesla to improve healthcare for Giga Berlin employees. Okay. Morgan Stanley's Adam Jonas on Tesla FSD supervised. Quote, I've been using FSD v12.3 heavily over the past few weeks. This past Sunday, I used more than 7 miles of driving between kids' soccer and lacrosse games in Westchester County, New York. I reckon I had FSD engaged for easily 90% of the day driving. The system is a pleasure to use and reduces my overall fatigue level. There's still a long way to go to remove the steering wheel, in my opinion. Transparency with the safety data with third-party validation will be a critical milestone for advancing deployment. Great. Xpeng CEO says, I welcome Tesla FSD to enter China. Tesla has a very good self-driving technology and brand. You know, Meta, Tesla Yoda has been sending me some videos to watch for Xiaomi SU7 and their founder and everything. The problem is they're all in Chinese, and I have no idea what they're saying. But
well, the
I'm
first
doing some more
problem is you think
research.
they're talking Chinese. There's no such language.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think they're talking simplified Chinese. How about that?
You mean Mandarin?
Mandarin, sure. Whatever, man.
Civilized Chinese is a text thing, not a spoken thing.
Oh, okay.
It's Mandarin or Korean. Sorry. Yeah, that's not
You know,
Korean.
these videos look pretty advanced to me in terms of their autonomous driving capabilities. What do you think?
I haven't seen the videos you've seen. I was going to bring up something about Sawyer's post if you want to go back to that real quick. Now that AEB is going to be required for all cars starting 2029, do you think NHTSA is going to include like a couple questions? Are they going to include like a safety rating for the AEB systems? And if they aren't all cars going to require basically to have either radar, LiDAR, or cameras on them? Cameras are probably the cheapest solution. And if you are going to have a camera in there, wouldn't it be kind of sensible for you to start talking to Tesla as one of the candidates for providing your AEB system?
Yeah, interesting question. Omar, what do you think?
Sorry, what was the question?
I think Meta started from the NHTSA's ruling that all cars must have AEB by 2029. And he's saying, why wouldn't automakers use this opportunity to license FSD from Tesla? Is that fair, Meta?
I was saying at least start with AEB, get their kind of dip their toes in the water.
Yeah, why not license AEB from Tesla?
Well, AEB obviously is very simple. Most AEB sucks, like really bad. So most people, they get a car with AEB, they turn AEB off because they're driving around and it just slams on the brakes for no reason. And they go, what the hell was that? And they just turn it off. So the AEB really has to be really good. You have to have no false positives, but also no false negatives, which the other systems have tons of false negatives. You know, even like just night or something. Oh, it's too dark, so it didn't work. So, you know, other AEB systems are much cheaper and simpler, but they don't work very well. If you really want to have a good AEB, you almost need to have full self-driving, right? Because the question of like, should I stop or should I not stop is actually very complicated. Like, for example, Tesla's the only one that has AEB for cross traffic. So you're driving on a road and then, somebody comes up from the side and they just jump in front of you. Most people or most AEB systems, they can't really handle that because it's difficult to predict what the car is going to do. Is the car going to go in front of you, or is it going to make a right turn, or is it going to just stay where it is? It's difficult to predict. But when you have full self-driving, you have a system that actually knows how to predict those things. It can tell based on the blinker and based on the way the car's turned and other factors what it thinks is likely to happen, and it can prepare. So, yeah, I think definitely if you are putting AEB into your cars, which everybody's going to have to do, a highly advanced AEB is much better than, your basic off-the-shelf AEB. You don't necessarily have to license FSD, but you're going to have a much better automatic emergency braking feature, as well as going beyond the regulatory requirements and having things like lane departure avoidance, where you're changing lanes and someone's about to hit you, and it can just move your steering wheel and move you back into the lane. Things like forward collision warning, things like obstacle aware acceleration, where if you have an obstacle right in front of you, it dims the acceleration a little bit so that you don't hit it. All these little things. And even like automatic collision avoidance, which basically just, makes it impossible to get in a crash. So I think these regulations, frankly, are like, it should have been 2024 that AEB was mandated, and they should have passed this regulation 40 years ago. By 2029, we're going to have, I think, generalized autonomy solved, almost certainly. So they need to push harder. What they should really be saying is that, by 2030 or 2035, all cars need to have self-driving built in, and the active safety features in AEB that goes with that, of course.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think Omar agrees.
Yeah, I think that was a yes.
Yeah, I would say it could theoretically be like a Intel Inside kind of thing where all the cars or sorry, all the computers had it at one point because it's easier to differentiate. If Tesla can convince one automaker to advertise, it comes with Tesla safety from AEB or whatever. Like suddenly all the cars might want to say, "Yep, maybe we can't compete with Tesla on a bunch of things, but at least try to neutralize some of the places where people might have resistance in buying our cars."
Yeah, I don't think that it will be legal to sell a car without this type of AI. You will have to include it or you will not be able to make a car, especially given how low cost it is, as Tesla's demonstrated. As the cost gets down and it gets readily available, I do see regulatory bodies around the world actually mandating not just AEB, but full FSD in every car that's sold.
We have the AEB master coming up. The master of AEB. If the connection works.
That was a very good intro. You just wasted it. You said it too early.
I know. It's all right. I'm full of good intros. Don't worry. There's more. Come on, Wes. Okay, I'm going to move you down to listener and give you an invite. That seems to work better. Electrek reports 10 minutes ago, literally 10 minutes ago. Tesla is already pulling back Supercharger plans after firing team. Let's read this real quick.
Well, who's pulling back the plans if the team's gone?
South pulling. Plans are pulling themselves. Is Wes here? No. All right, let's read this real quick. Tesla is already pulling back Supercharger plans after Elon Musk came in like a wrecking ball. Oh my god, this guy's language, and fired the whole charring team. spelling. As reported earlier today, and since confirmed by many departing Tesla employees, Elon Musk has fired Tesla's entire charging team. In an email announcing the move, CEO said that Tesla would continue building supercharger stations that are currently under construction without further commenting on how the lack of charging team will impact Tesla's plan to grow the critical EV charging network. We now learn that there are already direct impacts on planned future supercharger stations. Sources familiar with the matter told Electrek that Tesla backed out of 4 leases for upcoming supercharger locations in New York, 1 in Maspeth, South Bronx, 2 in Queens, and 1 in Gateway Center, Brooklyn. These were new stations recently announced to address concerns with overcrowded supercharger stations in New York. We reported on this station issue in January when several stations saw long wait times to access the charger. The problem was partly due to a surge in Tesla vehicles, blah, blah, blah. Three of the 4 sites were power ready, as some work was already being done to prepare them to become charging stations for Tesla. Interesting. There's a silver lining. When contacted, Revel, which operates its own fleet of electric taxis and charging stations in New York, expressed interest in these sites because of their location and capacity for high volume fast charging stations. There you go. Interesting. Tesla deployed a record number of superchargers last quarter and now operates 57,579 superchargers at 6,249 locations around the world. I'm going to skip the take. Meta, thoughts, feelings, emotions?
I think as much as we want to see the supercharger network built out, and I know you and I have gone back and forth on this, if you're building it out for people who own cars, you should put it where they park their cars, and it doesn't have to be super expensive because you don't have to get as many electrons there per hour. And then if you're going to build it out for robotaxi, you kind of want to centralize it to a place where you can clean the cars as well. So maybe the current locations don't make sense. Either way, I could see there being a need for changing direction, and it's not speaking to people's competence. Like per the email, he said one of the words he used was you have to be necessary. You may no longer be necessary.
Exactly. I pinned at the top of our screens a post by Marcel Fauti. Thank you, Brandon, for pinning me on this post. Let's read this real quick. Fire the whole supercharger team from top to bottom. End of the world. Unless, let's remember what happened in June 2022 at SpaceX and what happened after. On that bloody day, Elon Musk dismissed several top managers of the Starlink project at SpaceX. Among those fired were Jonathan Hoffler, who had been leading the global connectivity efforts for Starlink, and Rajiv Badial, the technical chief of Starlink, as well as the technical director of spacecraft. I remember that day when it happened. That was big news. Musk's reason for the dismissals was his dissatisfaction with the pace of development of the Starlink satellites, particularly with the technological advancements that would allow for a broader and more efficient deployment of the service. In short, the team assured him that no global constellation was possible within 5 years. That was a big mistake to tell. Only 2 years later, Starlink not only has a global constellation of 6,000 satellites, but millions of subscribers in dozens of countries. All this magic happened under a new team. The end of the world turned to be a little bit exaggerated. Now, what's wrong with Tesla superchargers? Among other things, the growing of the network is unbearably slow in minutes. I agree. Thank you. Among other things, the growing of the network is unbearably slow in many places. I remember well that at the beginning of 2023, we were invited by Tesla to vote for new supercharger locations worldwide. It was more than a year ago, and our local winner place is still an empty parking lot in PEX. Elon is right. This is unacceptable, and his proven management style fits is this. Fire those who had already done the maximum they could and give the task to new players. Now we just sit back, relax, and watch the miracle unfold. I like it. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to kind of like think critically about it, it's like, why are people worried about charging? Maybe we do need to kind of rethink this. Like, I was just thinking, like, these charging stations are so fast. If they were just everywhere, like the places you actually went, then anybody, even an apartment dweller, could have an EV very easily and just, plug in for 5-10 minutes and it'd be good. With these level 2 chargers, it's like, okay, you're not going to wait there for 8 hours. But if there were superchargers, in the right places, maybe smaller stations, but more of them across, different places, I don't know. There could be better strategies than the ones they've been pursuing. I don't know.
I think when we think about superchargers, we should just think about electrons per hour per location, because the utilities probably make it difficult to get tons of electrons to specific locations, and then it costs them to put up a mega pack and all the other things. And maybe that's just not the most efficient strategy. It was good for a period of time. Like, I think superchargers started back when JB was at the company, right? So like the strategy hasn't necessarily been revised for quite some time. And it may be worth saying, okay, we've hit critical mass. There's a sufficient coverage of the superchargers. Maybe the way to solve the problem isn't to continue to build more stations at the superchargers to increase the amount of electrons we're trying to get to each location. Maybe the better solution is to distribute it, to look at, okay, or the original plan included solar panels and charging at home. Why isn't the charging at home taking off? Why isn't the policy team convincing governments to say, hey, make it easier for people to have charging at home, whatever the case might be?
Exactly. Thank you, Meta.
It also would speak to why the policy team and Drew were let go on the same day.
Exactly. Yeah. If Robert Lopinto is in the listener mode, he can come up and we can maybe talk about his edge case. He has some new videos. In the meantime, Miro, go ahead.
Yeah, the thought I had was, long term, centralizing a whole bunch of chargers with service for cleaning and for the whole robotaxi fleet. So instead of and then incorporating like a solar charging, so you don't have to rely on utilities. That's it.
Meta?
The hard part about using solar to charge the cars is the rate at which the electrons are being captured by the or not being captured, but the amount of electricity that's being generated by the solar panels at any given location is never going to keep up with the draw. So you're going to have to transport the electrons there, the charge there. So if you want to do it with solar, you kind of have to partner with utilities to do that anyway. And Tesla is partnering with like PG&E and others, right? So they have to continue to push on that front. I think the decentralization of charging never panned out. The centralization seems to be the only focus. And I would love to see Tesla have a renewed focus on decentralizing the charging locations, having many more slow charging locations rather than few fast charging locations.
Thank you. Before Robert, do you have a couple more minutes? I want to kind of stick with the supercharger charging topic real quick, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. For sure.
So Meta, what do you think is the next step? What do you think is the next announcement we're gonna get? Let's speculate a little bit. Speculation time.
In the charging world?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they acquired this company in Germany that makes wireless charging and has relatively good efficiency. It doesn't lose a lot. I could see them announcing a partnership. I know you're going to skewer me on this, but a partnership with like large parking lot owners or companies that have like, malls, stores, etc., and say, we've created a product that they can buy and they can hook up, and it's slow charging, and you don't need to rebuild your infrastructure. You can just kind of hook into your existing systems, and it allows you to have all the cars in the parking lot that park over this thing seamlessly start charging and start going that route. I also don't think that happens for a few years.
Why wouldn't it happen for a few years?
Because they've possibly overbuilt on the supercharging stations at the moment, and allowing there to be a little bit more demand for people to actually go somewhere else would help. There's, I think, far too many people that I even know personally who don't bother to get a charger at home because they're like, I'll just go to the supercharger. And then they start complaining about it being inconvenient, but they just never bother to get the charger at home.
Okay, so you're saying that Tesla will prioritize, I guess, promoting or innovating around home charging rather than focusing on superchargers, growing supercharger further. Is that your claim?
Yeah, and maybe not directly making all the deals, but making the products available to companies and others so that they purchase it.
Omar, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of things that are changing in the business. We don't really know what the rationale behind the decision was or the new strategy could be, but I don't think that they're just sort of ending superchargers or anything like that. So home charging is important. I mean, maybe they could focus more on that. I think sort of battering down the hatches and being ready for a recession, being able to continue accelerating FSD and Optimus despite a potential recession and still being profitable is important. The one thing that I think of is just the strategy with selling to others, BP, companies like that, and partnering with them. You essentially just, sell them the hardware, make money that way, and they manage, all the capital intensive location maintenance aspects of it. So it could be that he just sees that as a more capital efficient strategy right now. And he's saying, look, EV sales are growing slower than expected. We built out all these superchargers, anticipating all these people would come. They're not really coming yet. So we can kind of slow down a little bit. We can maybe rely on these others. We can sell the supercharger hardware. They'll continue to build out, and we'll save, X $100 million that we can then reinvest into AI, use to juice up our margins, and, benefit our business in other ways.
Okay, Robert, I'm going to table the edge case. We're going to talk about that later. We have Sawyer and also Fred Lambert in the audience if he wants to come up and join the conversation on charging. Meta.
Another thing to think about is more companies adopt NACS. The differentiation for Tesla having to build out the charging locations, whether it's at home or superchargers, obviously superchargers are a little bit different, but the differentiation that Tesla has to be the one to do it versus others can do it starts to come down to, is this a profitable business? Elon's commented about they don't need to go solve every problem. They only usually solve the problems because others aren't solving them. I think as NACS gets adopted, the need for that goes down.
Sawyer, welcome. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks.
Are you feeling any different today that Elon's not following you anymore? Omar cried earlier. You're welcome to cry too. In this case.
Yeah, it was, a little bit surprising, obviously. I suspect he unfollowed Omar and I because we shared that the information article about the firings, and I assumed some of it was untrue because once he unfollowed, I assumed like, well, it must be untrue. But now we're seeing obviously public posts by some supercharging team employees.
Yeah, I wouldn't speculate about why he followed or unfollowed. People change who they follow all the time. There may be many reasons. It may not be even related to you. Who knows, right?
I mean, he unfollowed Kimball and Grimes in
Yeah.
December and then refollowed. I mean, Elon,
Yeah, exactly.
you never know. One thing I do want to address though is I see some people like saying, oh, Elon unfollowed because Sawyer leaks. So I did leak in the past. I stopped leaking in March of 2022 and haven't leaked since then. So obviously Elon followed me a year ago, so that wouldn't really make sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about too much. Obviously, you're always welcome here, and you're still our go-to source for news. So we appreciate everything you do for the community. Yeah, and yeah, people in the live chat agree with me too. I think you're reading too much into it. Honestly, just that it happens sometimes. All right, what do you think about this charging news, though?
It's a bit puzzling to me. I mean, on one hand, I was a little bit surprised in the shareholder deck how slow the supercharger rollout growth has been. And on the other hand, it could just be that Elon was unsatisfied with the performance of the whole crew. So I don't want to speculate too much because I honestly have no clue. And if employees end up wanting to share that, that's on them. But I'm not gonna. I don't know.
Okay, great. And we actually have somebody we have a couple of people in the space who used to work for the Supercharger team. They're welcome to hop on the speaker board and share their experiences. And again, the invite is open for Fred Lambert as well. I know he spoke with a couple of employees as well. Grant?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's pretty clear to me that they're looking to cut costs and save money. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think that regardless of whether or not superchargers are a good business, they're capex intensive. You presumably need to outlay a bunch of money before it slowly pays back over time. This is the sort of thing that you would expect from a business that's either looking to funnel capex to other initiatives like they are with, compute or development of new models. And they're firing people because they're trying to save money. I feel like that's my explanation. I understand that there are counterpoints that it's trimming fat and all healthy, good stuff, whatever. But in my mind, it's pretty simple. They're looking to save cash.
Yeah. And, the fact that they fired most of the team is clearly some sort of strategy change, as Meta was also mentioning just a second ago. Omar, go ahead.
So I'm just going to read you some numbers from Tesla's operational summary on page 6 of the deck from the latest earnings. Total production, down 2% year over year. Total deliveries, down 9% year over year. Global vehicle inventory, up 87% year over year. Tesla locations, up 26% year over year. Mobile service fleet, up 12% year over year. Supercharger stations, up 26% year over year. Supercharger connectors, up 27% year over year.
Omar, in your opinion, has the V4 supercharger rollout the pace of that been disappointing to you?
I haven't seen a single V4 supercharger. And from what I understand, the V4 chargers that are up still have a V3 power cabinet behind them. So there's no additional power coming through them. So I just haven't seen any V4 chargers at all. They've all been V3.
Exactly. Good points, guys. We have Machine coming up for the bad points now. Machine, go ahead.
It's funny when you join because there's the delay. So I didn't hear what you said except for just at the end. You said bad points. So I'm assuming you're talking about someone else.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think just one minor point is that even if you have zero growth in production and deliveries, you still need to build more superchargers because the total fleet is growing. And it's not a one-to-one relationship, but that's something to keep in mind. I mean, assuming Tesla's going to keep producing cars, they obviously have to still keep making more supercharger stations or some equivalent. So you can't just stop and everything be okay.
But do you need to grow at 26% when your sales aren't growing as fast as you anticipated? I mean, I can tell you here in California that the supercharger stations I'm at typically have a utilization below 50%. or around 50%, even at high traffic times. So improving the utilization improves the profitability. I think it's kind of an obvious place to cut costs. It may seem, kind of drastic, but I'm not sure really what the full strategy here is. We've only kind of heard this leaked email that came out from the information, but we haven't really heard any commentary from Elon on X about what his rationale is or what the new strategy around charging might look like.
No
Hey,
hands mode. No hands mode.
that's what that's really disrespectful to people who don't have arms, by the way. So I think you really need to take some sensitivity training. Yeah, I don't. I agree, Omar. I mean, you have to look at utilization. They may have built out many superchargers in some locations, way above capacity of what's needed, and some other places there's still some needs. So even if in those places, even if you have just zero growth, you still have cumulative growth of this fleet, and so you're going to need more superchargers. But yeah, there's some modeling you got to do to do that, and whatever it is, I'm sure in many places they don't need to do anything. But if you stop, we don't know for sure, right? But these posts on LinkedIn that they're basically saying the employees are saying everyone got laid off. You're gonna need some places. You're gonna need to build some more superchargers, and those places are gonna suffer if this is some long-term thing. I presume it's not going to be, but we're just running blind here.
Yeah. Well, we also have now Fred on the speaker board. And welcome, Fred. Welcome back. This is now the second time coming up here. Good to have you here. And obviously, this is right up your alley. And in the end, so no hands mode. Okay, so it's going to be no hands mode. Just make sure a couple of rules to kind of keep in mind. And Fred, I'm going to put you on mute first. We're going to do static. So it's important to stay on mute when you're not talking so we don't get static. It dramatically reduces the sound quality for the audience. And no hands mode means just wait a couple seconds until after somebody is done to start speaking. And I think we can have a really good discussion. In the meantime, I'm going to be shaving my head. So I'm not even going to be moderating. I'm just going to be listening. Okay. So Fred, welcome.
Thank you. I would just add to the idea that because of the slowdown in sales, this is triggering this move to cut down the whole charging team. It's true that sales have come down, but the pace of the supercharger network was way behind the pace of the deliveries for years. And so it's only very recently that this has changed. So like this is probably the most bearish move that Elon has done in a while, just beyond the broader round of layoff. If you think that if you think you're not going to grow much, and if you think the broader EV network is not going to grow much, you do slow down in charging infrastructure for sure. But it's a big premature because obviously there's a lot of places that already are at capacity or even below capacity, and we just reported that Tesla is already backed out of a few leases in New York City, which was already a problematic region for supercharger capacity. So this is going to be impactful to all current owners for sure.
I just want to add something briefly so everyone in the Spaces understands. This is a historical moment. This is the first time probably a Spaces has had 4 speakers who Musk has unfollowed on Next.
Yes.
If you're counting me, I don't think that Elon has ever followed me, to be honest.
What? That's so funny. All right. Okay, Meta, go ahead.
Fred, just out of curiosity, because you're talking about this is a bearish move. For every additional 1,000 cars sold, or whatever number you want to use, how many superchargers need to be built? And do you think that continues to scale linearly, or do you think over time you need less and less superchargers for more and more vehicles sold?
Well, I don't think you need fewer superchargers. I mean, unless there's a clear change in the mix of vehicle. Well, I know there's gonna be fewer supercharger needed over time because of the mix is gonna change more towards like city dwellers and whatnot. Because obviously EVs are better right now for people that have home charging situation. So there's going to be a change in what kind of station you need, whether like city supercharger or level 2 charging station in garages, for example. But I mean, we're talking about almost firing the entire team here. So it's a major slowdown, like no matter what you look at it. Like Tesla right now, like let's say like things turn around for Tesla and for the broader EV market, like it will take months, if not years, for Tesla to go back to the capacity by just for the lack of staff right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with that statement. I think what I'm trying to reason through is it possible they don't ever need that capacity again? The second question I would follow up with is, with the laws that have changed, with the incentives for supercharging networks, with the mass adoption of NACS, does Tesla still need to be the one to build that network out at this point? Or do you think that there are other companies like ChargePoint who are going to be incentivized to switch over to NACS and they can have that market?
I mean, there's a logic there, but you have to look historically. This has been a model that's not been successful. The only successful model, at least in North America, things are different in Europe and China, but in North America, you had to, if you're not the supercharger network, you're not successful at fast charging. It's as simple as that. So if Tesla is bidding on that, it's been a losing bet so far. So unless Elon knows like some players that are taking it seriously, like maybe they have like some big orders that came in for supercharger hardware for a serious player or something like that, maybe. But if not, if we don't see any news on that front soon, like I wouldn't take that as a possible theory.
First off, I just want to mention big picture. It's amazing how Tesla bulls have pivoted over the years from the supercharging network being the best thing about the company, the moat, to it doesn't matter anymore. We don't need to build anymore. Number two, I see this posted tweet. This guy's mocking the fact that they laid off the supercharging network people because Starlink also laid off people. Starlink laid off a few managers, didn't lay off the entire team. I know that because I know people who work there. It's just a total obnoxious try to reaching for something. And number three, Meta, you talk about scaling laws. We have other scaling laws here. Supercharging scaling laws. Can DeepMind find the model for the relationship between how many vehicles are produced and how many superchargers are needed? I would assume it's nonlinear over time, as you agree that you'll need less and less over time as production goes up. But at some point, you can't just increase charging speed and hope that gets people through quick enough that you don't need to build more. So I have to assume someone else is going to take the reins here to build these out.
Okay. Sawyer, Omar, Grant, Meta.
Yeah, this move by Tesla is interesting, especially because they just started opening up their supercharging network to non-Tesla EVs. I think it was Ford in February, and then GM and Rivian like this month, I think. So
slow down or decelerate it with the information here. It could be that another department is just consolidating this team. Oftentimes you see that. So as an example, if they now view supercharging as part of their retail footprint, they may want to consolidate this team with, let's say, the stores type of team. And there's other, it could be the energy team, for example, that picks up the work here. There's definitely maybe a little bit of that dispersion using AI to better coordinate the kind of when a car is being prompted to charge, and so across network you have a less number of stalls that's required. But I feel like it's too soon. It might be just a shuffling of the ownership here. And by the way, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to submit to host a supercharger and see what response I get back.
Fred.
Yeah, I think we can confidently say that it's going to slow down the supercharger rollout. Like it backing out of leases, so I think it's clearly going to result in a slowdown. But what I think we need to look at too is like this might not even be about any kind of strategic change to the supercharger network. Like it's not like it's the only whole team that has been fired at Tesla. There's been several whole team that's been let go. The cathode team has been let go. A specific battery pack team has been let go. As like Elon throwing his weight around and trying to like consolidate his power at the company. I don't know if I agree with that, but it's definitely a viable theory. I think more broadly, what I'm seeing is like Elon is making Tesla less of a car company. Like we heard of 2 vehicle program being killed in the last few days. The Roadster has been delayed again. Production capacity in the midterm has been reduced. It's becoming less of a car manufacturer, and the bet is on obviously robotaxi. We've heard that one before. But the broader change is it might be what is affecting this specific move here, not any kind of like decision to back out of a supercharger network or slow down or anything like that. Because we've heard clearly now that Tesla has killed its main vehicle program that was most people were expecting most of the volume from Tesla to come from in the next few years. So this is significant.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the different perspectives on this because, as Fred said, Fred just said they killed the next gen vehicle program. Meanwhile, other people are saying no, they're just going to produce it on the same lines later this year, early next year. And these sound like totally different things to me. Did they kill the program or not? And secondly, Tesla Yoda is saying, oh, maybe they're just reshuffling the supercharger people into some other department. No, they fired everyone. They fired everyone in the supercharging department. So that's not going to just start moving over and growing again. And yeah, I do think the CEO has switched to a robotaxi mission, but part of that is he has to conserve money because there's not enough money to go around for all these programs. And he's decided, crap, we're not growing anymore. We're not making enough money to fund all these interests. So we got to cut stuff to be lean and efficient. And so he's basically saying, we're going to cut the next gen vehicle platform growing in Mexico. We're going to cut Supercharger. And, the other part of this is he doing this because someone mentioned this, he's saving a lot of the compensation packages from these people. And so that he can end up owning more of the company. And my last point is simply the fundamentals of the company have changed. It's not about, going to a sustainable energy as what I bought in 2018 and 2019. It's now about moving to building Optimus bots that can jack you off.
Wow. You topped yourself with 1,000 people in the audience. I do want to say one thing real quick. So I see some replies about, don't give Fred the mic. Fred is a bear, blah, blah, blah. If I see those, continue to see those, I will remove people from the space. Okay? Whoever is saying those things, I will remove you from the space and you can't listen to the recording. Fred, Meta, then Omar.
Yeah, I'm literally long Tesla, guys. I'm not a bear. If I share some critique, it's not bearish. It's just my own thoughts. Anyway, to clarify what Machine said about the vehicle program, because I know there's a lot of confusion in there, and I know some people in this very room and call me a liar for it. So I just want to make sure, like, my point exactly on this, based on very good internal information, is that Tesla had 3 vehicle program in the work on the next generation. They were nicknamed NV9 1, 2, and 3. The NV9 1 and 2 was a smaller sedan, and then the 2 was a smaller crossover SUV, whatever you want to call it, like take Model 3, Model Y, basically, but on the next generation vehicle, smaller. These 2 vehicle programs have been completely canceled at Tesla. The lines that were being put together to produce them have been canceled. The NV9 3 is still on, the robotaxi, and they're still building a line for that. And now they came up very recently. I mean, literally a week after they canceled the NV9 1 and 2, they came up with the NV36, which is basically a cut down Model Y, and with some new technology too as well, like they said in the shareholder deck. So this is a brand new vehicle program that has nothing, maybe not nothing, like maybe they're gonna take some technology from the NV9 program, but very little, much closer to the Model Y than anything else. It's a brand new vehicle program that they came up together like a few weeks ago, literally. Instead, the NV9 1 and 2 were in the work for a year prior to that, even more.
Okay. Omar.
Yeah, I just think the negativity gets so over the top based on some people got fired. Now they're ending supercharging. There's no more new models. All based on what? Not much exactly. So I just call BS on them shutting down the supercharger network or not committing to it. I think the supercharger network's going to continue to stay around. They're going to continue to invest in it. And I think they have a great strategy for charging in the future. We're really doing a lot of speculating today and drawing a lot of conclusions without any statement from the company at all about what they're doing. It's all just based on people who were fired saying that they were let go.
Meta, Lord.
Yeah, I think people are drawing conclusions with partial information. Just because vehicle programs were canceled and we know about it doesn't mean that vehicle programs haven't been canceled in the past. Just looking at the numbers on the new vehicle program numbers, or trying to just think about how many versions of the Cybertruck do you think there were? How many versions of Model X, various other things? If Tesla's the kind of company where they design a single model and that's the exact model they ship to production, they're insanely efficient. It is more likely that there are a bunch of programs that get created and then get canceled. And there's a culture of leaking right now, which is why this information is coming out. And in the past, there probably wasn't.
Yeah. Lord.
Yeah, I saw the news this morning. I didn't really think much of it after I saw the layoff. I just want to say that it's unbelievable how much you people speculate and how little faith you have in management. They have not said a single thing about this. And here you people are talking nonsense. Whenever I hear machine talk, I get pissed off because I'm listening to some guy who has zero operational experience talking shit about Elon every single day.
Okay,
Then you have people like Fred, who's an
sorry,
absolute joke.
you can't use this. None of that is acceptable. Machine.
Well, knowing my management about Tesla, there's no more managers left. They're all gone. So yeah, no one knows anything. What I was going to say is, I think really we need to focus on Optimus in the future. Anyways, I mean, that's the real moneymaker in the future. So I hope to hear more about that. And actually, my personal experience. Wait, yes, I gave you a personal story yesterday. Coming back from Florida, I go through the scanner. You put your arms up and they scan you. And I walk out. They beep. I get beeped, and they beep beep beep. You have something on you. and they show a picture of the body, right? Why don't you guess where the red rectangle was on my body?
Hey, we got a statement out from Elon right now. Tesla still plans to grow the Supercharger network, just at a slower pace for new locations and more focus on 100% uptime and expansion of existing locations.
Good, thank you, Omar. And I pinned that tweet at the top of our screens. Machine, I'm sorry. I think you spoke, right? Habib.
Yeah, well, I was waiting patiently with my hand up, not cutting anybody off. I was going to tell you this tweet from Elon, since he doesn't follow certain people. I get this information direct now.
If you've ever been unfollowed or blocked by Elon, you're welcome to request to speak. We have a common therapy session going on right now. We've all been there. We know how it feels. Come on up. It's all right. All right, so Tesla, again, to reiterate, Elon says Tesla still plans to grow the Supercharger network, just at a slower pace for new locations and more focus on 100% uptime and expansion of existing locations. Interesting. Machine.
I have finished my story. So this thing beeped. There's a red box on my crotch. They claim, "Sir, do you have something in your crotch?" I'm like, "No, I don't have any metal or anything in my crotch." I don't know why this thing went off. I literally start pulling down my shorts, and they're like, no, sir, don't do that, please. And they had some dude come over and just feel me up. And not only did he feel me up, it's not like I'm in my crotch, behind me, and then turn around both sides.
Does anyone remember the first half of this story?
So my point is, listen, he slides his hand up.
All right, dude. Okay. Yoda, save me.
What happened to Machine today? Machine, did you get up from the wrong side of the bed?
Well, I got felt up 4 times.
Okay. All right.
And I
Okay.
need
All right,
Optimus
dude.
to replace
All
the
right.
humans.
Okay. Fred, what are your thoughts on Optimus?
Well, I mean, since the Gen 2, I've been a little bit more optimistic about it. I mean, I do agree with Elon that Tesla has a very big competitive advantage through having optimized for efficiency with the compute power and energy inside the vehicle. Every other automaker is working on self-driving. They started out with cars that the trunk is filled up with computers and whatnot, sensors that wouldn't be acceptable in a consumer vehicle. All these things gave Tesla, forced Tesla to focus a lot on efficiency, and this is going to be super helpful for packaging all that into a humanoid robot format. So for that, I'm optimistic, and I mean, even if I don't know about like Elon, somewhat like threatening that Optimus won't work at Tesla without him and all that. That's where I think things get a little bit weird on that front. But as a whole, I think the Optimus program, like humanoid robots, looks like it's the right time for humanoid robots.
Let me ask you this. So this is a great topic, I think, because we're going to have some debate. So Fred, what do you think is the chance of Optimus development going well as planned, production ramping to volume, and by volume, let's say millions of Optimus in the next 5-10 years, with and then also without Elon? And I'm going to ask the same question to others.
What are the chances of Optimus ramping up to a successful program with millions of units? That's the question?
Yeah. What's the probability estimate for 5 to 10 years out that we have millions of Optimus around with and without Elon? So 2 probability estimates.
Okay. I think it's highly probable with or without Elon. Like I said, it looks clear to me that it's the right time for humanoid robots. We've seen other companies also building them. If you're following the AI space even remotely, that things are happening right now. Things are moving fast, and what we're seeing as a consumer is way behind what's actually been done out there. So I think, regardless of Elon, I think this is likely to be the right time for humanoid robots. With or without Elon is such a hard question, because you could argue that right now Elon is more problematic than positive for the Optimus program. Like XAI is recruiting from Tesla, and I'm not just talking about the guy that was reported last month. And I know that Elon had an excuse for that one, even though you could question his own excuse for it. The XAI is directly recruiting from Tesla right now. Even people that are being fired by Elon right now gets an offer from XAI the next day. So this is not an ideal situation with or without him, obviously.
Okay. All right. So Fred's position is with or without Elon, Optimus program will succeed. Let's go Meta, Machine, and Yoda.
Can I also ask one question after?
Just first round again. The goal here is to kind of just set the probability estimates so that I understand where people stay. So just stick with that for a second. Go ahead.
With Elon, high probability, let's say 90% probability that they actually get a product out there that customers use. Without Elon, 20% probability they get something out there, but they don't capture the lion's share of the market.
Okay. Machine, then Yoda.
Yeah, with Elon, it's like 99% likely that they succeed and get a product out. Without him, I don't know, 50%. It is significantly less. I think he adds value because you have to have the right person in charge to push people to produce the right product and have the vision. Otherwise, these people end up being researchers, like constantly fidgeting with the device.
Yoda.
So, yeah.
Yeah, with or without Elon, both are possible. With Elon, the difference will be scale at which can start to displace human labor force in the long run.
Good. And then Omar, and I think I'll probably agree with Omar here.
What are we talking about? Optimus?
Yeah. What's the probability of Optimus program succeeding in the next 5-10 years? And success, let's define it as millions of Optimus ramped profitably.
I mean, this is what we call a $0 billion market. It's a market that doesn't exist yet. It's a market that could be much bigger than smartphones or much bigger than personal computers, really. But it doesn't exist yet. And it's very difficult to build up a new market from nothing. So there are very few people who can do that. There are many CEOs who can take an existing business and they can optimize it and hopefully not ruin it. But creating a new market from scratch is something that is very difficult, going from 0 to 1. And I think Elon has proven many times that he's one of the people who can create new markets. I think he really helped with the creation of the electric vehicle market, the creation of private space flight, the internet. So I would say it definitely majorly increases Tesla's chances of success in establishing this as a market if Elon is there at the helm. I mean, he, in sort of focusing on vision-based self-driving, proved, I think, very forward-thinking in terms of how he looks at AI. And of course, he was, a founder of OpenAI along with Andrej Karpathy, who started the Tesla AI team. So I would definitely say he's crucial to the Optimus effort. And if he wasn't there, there'd probably be a much better chance of another company succeeding.
Okay. Meta, what's your question?
Fred mentioned that Elon's recruiting from other companies. Even if Elon is recruiting, I'm curious if you think the high-tech employee lawsuit and the findings from that would basically make it impossible for Elon to not recruit selectively from certain companies.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please? I wasn't listening to the first part.
Regarding the notion that Elon's recruiting from XAI or that some of his companies are recruiting from other companies, do you think that the high-tech employee lawsuit that occurred a few years back I can summarize it if needed, but do you think that the findings from that and the rulings from that basically make it where you must recruit from companies and you can't say don't recruit from certain companies?
I don't remember that. I mean, was there any specific about that regarding like owning a private company with a higher level of ownership versus a public company where you have obligation towards your shareholders?
It had more to do with if you don't actively recruit from certain companies, you're artificially suppressing the wages and opportunities for employees. So when Steve Jobs and other companies, I think Google, Palm, and all these other companies were intentionally not recruiting from each other, that was basically considered wage fixing.
Okay, I understand. Well, I mean, look, if we want to go into the legalese, I'm not you guys for that. I'm not a lawyer, but I think just objectively, if you look at the situation, it is problematic when you have a guy that has a private company where he has control over, owns a majority ownership of the company, and a public company where he has holdings in that company, but he is de facto the head of the company, but has other shareholders. It is a public company. If you go recruit from that and towards your private company where you benefit more, it is problematic. I think that's objectively true. In other words, like, do you think if Elon finds like the next big like genius, like superstar talent in AI, do you think he recruits him for Tesla, or do you think he recruits him for XAI?
It's up to him. He may recruit for XAI because he said publicly if he can't control the AI and he's building AGI, he wants to have control over it. But I think making it sound like he's doing something illegal or violating ethics, it's questionable because you can look at it from a different perspective of why should that employee not get a higher stake or higher salary that they might be able to get from XAI than they would from working at Tesla?
Well, you can make the argument of why is he not getting that salary at Tesla then. I don't understand that perspective. I'm approaching this from the perspective of Tesla, obviously. Like, I'm not approaching it from the perspective of the employee. I'm talking about if you're trying to secure AI talent, Elon has it's a conflict of interest. Now, I know you're like focusing on the legalese here. I don't know based on the jurisdiction that they are in, if it's a conflict of interest at the legal level, but from the true meaning of the word conflict of interest, it is a conflict of interest, correct?
Yeah, there's definitely conflicts. I agree. But that arises just from having a CEO having many companies in the first place.
Yes, that's true, and it's been true with SpaceX. But obviously, with SpaceX, like my main concern with that has emerged more as both Tesla clearly more becoming involved in AI, but Elon himself saying that Tesla is an AI company and that Tesla is worth nothing without AI through the self-driving program and in the future through Optimus. I mean, those are his words, not mine. So when you have a CEO saying that, and then at the same time, dingling this thing that if I don't get 25% voting shares, and then that I won't be building AI product at Tesla, and at the same time, he has his own AI company on the side. Like, you had all these things. Like, it's not a pretty picture. That's all I'm saying. Like, in terms of the legalese and all that, I'm no lawyers. Like, I cannot comment on that specifically.
Fred, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but did you vote to approve Elon's compensation?
Did I vote yes the first time in 2018? Is that what you're saying? You cut for a second.
No, just this time around.
If I'm voting for him this time around, I voted for him last time, and I would be tempted to vote for him again. You know what? The main thing that has stopped me from committing to that is that the board has not updated the plan whatsoever to include any kind of CEO contract to highlight how to get around those conflict of interest, or Elon committing to any type of spending time at Tesla and just doing whatever he wants, coming in and out. I think Tesla deserves a full-time CEO. That's what I'm saying.
Gotcha. Okay. Any comments from the board, or should I open up for new speakers? Yoda the machine.
Yeah, just a quick comment that I like the new Elon style, debunking these conspiracy theories, whether it's about the supercharging network or the robotaxi and compact discussion.
Machine.
I agree with that. The way it stops us from speculating too much, right? I guess we get an hour over speculating, and then he can say something and we stop. But I just want to ask a big picture for all the speakers on the board. How do you value Tesla in present day, where automotive is really struggling? Earnings are decreasing, at best flat, and not much upside for the next few years. At best, maybe 20% growth. But the company's valued at something where they're expecting still 50% growth in earnings based on the PE ratio. It's something where they're obviously modeling in big growth in energy and robotaxi revenues or FSD revenues. So I'm struggling with this sort of bifurcation, because usually you would value the company hoping that all parts of the company are going to grow in the next few years. But they've been very explicit now that basically there's not going to be much growth in automotive. So how do you rationalize the current share price and where you expect it to go in the next few years?
I think it goes back to the question I asked. What do you think is the value of Tesla? What do you think is the probability, with or without Elon, with Elon, Optimus program achieving millions of robots profitably in the next few years? I agree with Elon. I've agreed in the last couple of years that Optimus comprises majority of the intrinsic value going forward. Now, having said that, I don't think automotive is zero. Right now, we have elevated interest rates. Those interest rates will decline over the next couple of years. The Fed has identified current interest rates as restrictive, and by my estimate, by about 2%. So what's the normalized demand for 60 vehicles plus Cybertruck with a couple % lower auto loan rates? I would base it on that. And based on that, although obviously is more than zero, I would estimate it somewhere between 100 to 200 billion dollars. And then we'll see where Cybertruck production goes. Tesla Energy is doing well. Megapack margins are, I think, higher than what we see as the overall gross margin for the Tesla Energy segment, because electricity generation, solar panels, they don't have much margin. And then robotaxi and Optimus machine.
Yeah, I'm along those lines. So I think basically you value automotive plus energy right now at, say, 300 billion. And what's Tesla valued at? Between 500 and 600 billion now. So you would argue that at least they have $300 billion valuation based on, FSD software, robotaxi, and Optimus. And imagine if you had a startup that was working on those technologies and they're raising capital at a valuation of $300 billion. That would be pretty high. And I'm not saying it's not valid, because, of course, the final outcome here, if they are achieved, is much higher valuation than 300 billion. But it's still giving a pretty high probability to the success of that. And so I'm not arguing with that per se, but it's just going to be a volatile future.
I disagree with that last part. I don't think the market is assigning a high probability at this time. And that's because when Optimus succeeds, it's going to be at least one, if not two orders of magnitude value. So if it's valued at about 100 billion, let's say today, and I would argue that it's less, and this thing is worth trillions of dollars, then you're talking less than 10% probability of success.
Yeah, sorry. Optimus is not. I'm thinking more FSD robotaxi.
Yeah,
is something is, but yeah, it's not. It's not Optimus yet at all.
Yeah, I accept your apology. It's very mature of you to start apologizing finally 2 years into this history of the space.
You're welcome. Finally, I'm learning.
Maybe that TSA agent was onto something.
You know what you need to do, you two, if you want me to apologize.
What? Give you chicken?
Pull my chicken.
Oh, oh my god, okay. Fred, I apologize for machines immaturity. This happens every now and then. Yoda?
Yeah, I think if you really zoom out, I guess there's a global fleet that needs to be replaced from traditional ICE to electricity, and that global fleet is over 1 billion vehicles. And each year there's roughly 70 million new vehicles being purchased on a slow year. I think this was the last couple years, and at the peak it could be 100 million new vehicle purchases per year. And essentially, you ask, in the long run, what is Tesla's market share of that 70 to 100 million new vehicles per year? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Whatever you want to apply, and then therefore that's 10 to 20 million new vehicles per year. Now, then you have the energy business, which Elon has mentioned, that's equivalent or larger to the vehicle business. So you could size that up. There's insurance and all that, but we won't talk about that. What's interesting for me is that I'm starting to think about the production minutes that I own, that is of Tesla, on an annualized basis. And it used to be that those minutes are used to pump out cars. But in the future, those minutes are also going to be used for ride-hailing service, which means I'm going to count how many rides a year can Tesla do. Now, Uber did 9.4 billion rides last year. 9.4 billion rides. Now, you could say in the short run, is a billion out of the question? And then you take the profits per share, or profits per ride. Are they going to make $1, $2? What's that ride profit per ride that Tesla will make? Given the average revenue per ride. Then you turn that into an EPS, and then you put a multiple on that EPS. And that might be the number on the ride-hailing business. So yeah, that's how I was kind of at a super high level look at that.
Thank you. Machine, do you agree with all that? I think there's a yes. I think there's silence. There's a yes. All right, what else do we need to talk about today? Penny is on the board. Penny, how are you?
I'm doing great. I was enjoying listening, but thanks for the speaker, or thanks for the mic. How y'all doing today?
Doing well. Pretty eventful day, huh?
Yeah. The morning news was probably the most shocking to me.
Yeah. Tell us more.
I mean, we've all heard it. I don't think we need to belabor it, but the leaked email and the repercussions of the linked email.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, we talked about Supercharger Network quite a bit. Is there anything in that email? I didn't see the email. Is there anything in the email? Oh, leaked email. Okay, never mind. Never mind. We're taking a slightly different approach going forward based on the information. Robert, welcome. How are you?
Great, Yaman. How you doing?
Doing well. You want to talk about this edge case that you have? I pinned the videos at the top.
Oh, great. Thank you. This time they are safe. There are no F-bombs like my friend dropped the last time because the FSD blew through a stop sign. Luckily, that did not happen this time. So this is a repeatable disengagement scenario here in Queens, New York, on a road called Queens Boulevard. It's about 60,000 cars a day pass through. It's 7.5 miles long. And yesterday, I got 4 different scenarios I was able to test out on this one exit that has not passed this test in the 2 years since I've owned the Tesla with FSD. So this is about 6.5 minutes worth of videos. So the first scenario, I just got a mount for the Model Y to mount the camera. So now you can see the screen as well as the road all at the same time. And in that scenario, for the very first time as I was attempting to move from the main road of Queens Boulevard into the service road.
Robert,
Oh,
take a breath. Take a breath, man. You're
am I
gonna
going too
die.
fast?
This is long form spaces. This is not CNBC. You know.
All right.
Also, like a lot of people are doing other things, so you want to kind of take your time a little bit.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. So this is a scenario where I'm moving from the main road, a 3-lane boulevard, over to a 1-lane service road that's adjacent to it, separated by a median. And all along Queens Boulevard, there are these exit lanes that allow you to move over to the right and then exit from the main road into the service road. On all past versions of this attempt, we've had several behaviors that I've experienced. One, it completely bypasses this exit altogether. Two, it attempts to move into the lane and then immediately bails on that attempt and goes back into the main road. Three, which happened last time, it got into the exit lane, which has its own dedicated stop sign, and it just blew right through the stop sign and merged immediately without slowing down right into the service lane.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask Meta a question here, if he's available. Meta, thank you for being generous with your time. I know today's a real busy day for you, but this is a good example of one criticism I hear about FSD. So we had Matthew in this space many times, a cruise engineer, previous cruise engineer. And one of his arguments was, you can't scale data all you want, but what concerns him is Tesla sometimes fails, FSD fails today with basic road issues like a stop sign. So what will more data do since you already had billions of miles of data? So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, that comes down to, I think people have a lot of experience with software, but not AI. Think of it as a rule-based system where if you write the right rules, it'll do the right thing. But you're not writing rules, you're writing probability distributions. Lighting conditions are different for each stop sign, the angle, glare. So while you say that you've seen millions of stop signs, to you as a trained human, you've seen millions of stop signs. To the model, these things look different.
Perfect. So based on that, Robert, is there anything special about the stop sign that you have? Is the lighting different? Is the position different? Is it upside down?
Absolutely nothing. This is a perfectly normal stop sign. If you watch the videos, I think, Meta, I think you'll agree. Interestingly enough, it succeeded for the very first time yesterday because something happened that had never happened before. I had a lead car in front of me take the same exit. And so not once, but twice in 2 attempts, a lead car got in front of me and it made it successfully. The other 2 times I attempted, it failed just as usual. And when it fails to take the exit, it goes to the next intersection and tries to make a right turn, which is marked clearly as illegal by both signage, which I take that the FSD is not yet reading signs, but there's also a straight arrow on all 3 lanes of the road, and so it ignores that as well. So it's kind of a double failure in a way, although I was extremely happy to see it actually succeed once. But like I said, it seems to only do if there's a lead car. At least that's the evidence I have to date.
Perfect. We have our edge case specialist on the board now as well. Previous autopilot product manager. Wes, do you have any questions for Robert for this edge case?
Robert, I just caught the tail end of that, but it does sound consistent with things that I've been seeing as well, where some amount of map metadata is needed to improve these situations. Are you able to connect your car to Wi-Fi to take updates from your experiences?
Yeah, I'm in Wi-Fi all the time in my driveway as soon as I pull into the driveway. So all of my experiences, my disengagements, my voice notes, everything is
Sweet.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, because the team definitely is ingesting those and using those for improvements to map metadata. So what you're describing won't happen anymore. So cool.
Yeah, I figure eventually it'll hit the training set. I am a technical product manager. Prior to that, I did spend 35 plus years as a solution architect, so I am familiar with the engineering discipline. So I think like an engineer.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Perfect. Glad to have you on the space.
You just made Wes really happy.
I know it's highly unusual to get another tech PM in here, so I appreciate that.
All right. Well, if we have any tech PMs in the audience, if you want to make Wes happy, just request a speak. Omar.
Yeah, sorry to go off topic for a bit, but the Cybertruck is now getting the spring update rolling out.
That's great news. Thanks for updating us. Wes, anything else you want to ask Robert? Go ahead, Wes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just joined, so I was talking to my realtor. So I didn't really hear everything, but glad to hear the spring update is coming to the Cybertruck. I can't wait until I get it on mine because I really want that those off-road improvements. I want to do some donuts.
Great. Meta, when do you think we're going to have, let's say, majority of the fleet on, let's say most of the fleet, so 70-80% of the fleet on one software at a time, instead of this kind of bifurcated development process?
Honestly, I thought it would have happened by now. It kind of concerns me that it's not there, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know when it would happen.
Wes.
And maybe Robert can chime in too, but it was one of my interview questions, and I think it was at Tesla, was like, how would you go about validating, the entire fleet of vehicles when each vehicle might be unique for hardware parts because all of the different ECO changes that go in? How do you know with a given validation matrix that you've kind of covered all of your bases? And my overall answer was like, you'll never know. You just have to kind of statistically demonstrate that when you over-test one thing in one build, that it doesn't actually have an issue later on. So it's very difficult with all of the changes that go into Tesla vehicles to kind of ensure that your validation matrix has a very low error rate.
Absolutely. I also wonder if the move from a single neural network, if it truly is a single neural network, or do they still have a collection of neural networks, and those 300,000 lines of C++ code they removed was the glue code between each neural network doing the handoff from one to the other. I am very curious. I don't know if anybody has any insight into that. Because if you have individual neural networks, you have some points, intermediary points where you can test things. But if it's all one set of inputs in and controls out, how do you know in the intermediate what decisions are being made?
Great. Just a quick announcement. We're not accepting requests to speak going forward. We are not accepting requests to speak for the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then we're going to end the space after this conversation. Meta.
So there are two forms of testing: white box testing, where you know what's going on inside, and black box testing, where you don't know what's going on inside. For models, you generally do black box testing. The hard part with having models stitched together is that you don't necessarily know what the right thing to do is in the intermediate states. For a while, Tesla with V11 was trying to get perception to work, and then they were going to try and get planner controls, and then AucNet, and they had all these different things. And while each of them might be performing well by the standards the team is setting, it doesn't mean the whole system stitched together is working well. The beauty with end-to-end is you just have to know, is it driving or not driving properly? In order to make it better, you got to give it more data. Now, that being said, usually when you train end-to-end models, you still have a stitched together model in the cloud that you use for training to build the teacher model before you do distillation to make the smaller model.
Wes?
Well, it's great detail, Meta. And I believe we're not talking about stitched together models unless Meta thinks differently. I think we're just talking about one foundational model, which is taking photons in and controls out.
Yeah, in the car, I don't think you have a stitch together model. You may in the cloud, but you definitely don't in the car. And the main reason for that is anytime you had to go to CPU to stitch anything together, you lose 3 orders of magnitude in terms of speed.
So, okay, so Wes is, I guess, implying that we're never going to have most of the fleet on one, as long as we have different hardware. Is that what you're implying, Wes?
I'm implying that different versions of autopilot hardware cause the builds to be different. There's also a lot of different hardware in the major software build, because like autopilot tends to be separate from major build, so those are merged. And so if the major software build, like other features that are on that build, are not able to be validated in time for FSD to be validated along with, because they don't take a step back, FSD, then you're going to have, go out without, the kind of the latest build, because those two things line up.
Okay, his connection was really bad, but can you just summarize what he said?
As long as they're still developing quickly on autopilot, there will be a separate branch for autopilot than the other features. And they'll have to merge the branches at that point. And if those features are different for different cars, it could probably also be different. Did I get that right, Wes?
Yeah, sorry, I'm breaking up. I'm driving.
Another thing I would
I
say.
mean, honestly, at this point, if West ever has good connection, I'm going to be like, the hell frozen over. The world's about to end.
Hey, this is cellular crap, but it's all rainy and weirdness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Pen, do you have anything to add to the conversation, or what else is on your mind?
No, to be honest, I joined just to listen. I got my 5-year-old here with me, and I'm about to go pick up my other daughters, but this is the best space to know what's going on. So here for it. Thanks, Yaman. Thanks, Meta. Thanks, everyone. Wes.
I appreciate that. And on behalf of speakers, I mean, this space wouldn't be anything without all the great speakers we have. And thank you so much for all of them. Wes?
Penny, do you drive FSD? I don't remember.
I do. I'm on 12.3.4 right now. And I was joking in a space earlier today. The last time that I can remember intervening is because I put in the wrong address in the GPS and it was about to fly past the turn. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Oh, I entered the wrong spot. But otherwise, it's like, man, around here in North San Diego, it's insanely good. It always works. I just expect to get from my driveway to where I'm going.
Yeah, my kids are saying like, oh, maybe today it'll be, the first time that it fails, because it hasn't failed on like the last eight or 9 trips to school and back.
Yeah, I wasn't even trusting it in like driveways and near school zones and stuff in previous versions, but now it's like I never get worried. It just seems to handle everything really well. My biggest complaint is that it is a little bit too hesitant, at stop signs and right-hand turns and stuff like that. I think they'll probably get that worked out pretty quick. Anyway, I'm hitting the road. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Enjoy, Penny. Take care. Omar, would you like to give us an overview of what to expect, what people should expect from this spring update?
Well, I think Tesla tweeted out a full list of all the features. Probably just best to go there. I don't have it up in front of me. I could pull it up if you want me to read it out.
Just kind of like, off the top of your head, a couple of features that you're looking forward to, maybe.
Well, I'm looking forward to the power share feature to back up my home in the Cybertruck. I'm looking forward to the new off-road mode. I think the new UI for the new for the 3-in-Y with Ryzen is pretty great. I love the little map in the corner and the full screen 3D vehicle like you have in the Cybertruck. I love it in the Cybertruck, so I think it's going to be great in the other vehicles. And for people who are on 2024.8, they're going to get to finally experience FSD 12. So that's going to be super exciting as well. And yeah, there's a lot of small little features that are going to be nice, like being able to just stand by the trunk and the trunk opens for you automatically, things like that. So, I mean, this is a pretty big update, much better than the holiday update even. And normally there is no spring update. They just do a, holiday update. So I think it kind of just is a symbol of Elon just kind of stepping the game up at Tesla. The holiday update came out and people said, you know, it's not that great of a holiday update. And he said, all right, well, then we're doing another update and we're going to make it good. And I think this one lives up to what customers expect.
Very good. Omar, I really appreciate you being here every single day. You spend just as much time as I do most days, and this space would not be the same without you. So thank you. All right. On that note, we're going to end this space. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been more than, I think, 3 hours. Good space. We also have a couple of spaces from yesterday. You can always go back and listen to those. If you need more Tesla Live, you can go to YouTube and scroll around as well. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you all next time.